as it pertains to Super Bowl 60. We'll get to it on the show today. We have an NFL guest, I believe, live in Santa Clara. So we'll get to some of the news. There's a little bit of concern for Seattle on the injury front that came out today. We'll talk about that. It has not affected the line. Entertainment purposes only. Seattle, a 4.5-point favorite at last check. So we'll get to that. A tough night in college hoops last night. BYU on the road. They have now lost 4 of their last 5 basketball games and are barely hanging on to a top 5 seed at this point. They lose in Stillwater at Oklahoma State, 99-92, just another atrocious start. They were down 29-14. So we'll get to that on the show today. Unfortunately for the Utes, they had 2 very winnable games at home over the past 5-6 days. They lost both of them. 71-63 last night to Arizona State. Arizona State had 7 players available. So Bobby Hurley decided to play zone in order for his team to not get tired. And the Utes, Alex Jensen talked about this after the game. It's not like they're not coached to understand how to attack a zone, but they certainly can't execute. And that's been the deal all year long. A good night from Don McHenry. Probably the worst game of the season from Terrence Brown. Without Don McHenry, they lose by 20. And they actually pulled within 4 points with a couple of minutes left. But unfortunately, unable to get it done here in Salt Lake City. And it does not get any easier for either Utah or BYU. The Utes are now on the road. It's going to be next week. They're going to take on Kansas on the road. Then they're back home on the 10th against Houston. So 2 of the best teams in the country. And BYU will look to get off the snide at home on Saturday against that same Houston team, the number 8 team in the country. So we'll get to all the college basketball storylines. Utah State was able to get it done in a very tough place to play on the road in the pits against New Mexico. Utah State currently in a virtual tie atop the Mountain West Conference with San Diego State, but they beat them, so I believe they own the tiebreaker. So some college basketball on the show today. The Utah Jazz are back in action. Coming up at 5:30 tonight at Atlanta, an old friend, Quinn Snyder, will be involved in that. Of course, none of the players acquired in the massive trade that took place a couple of days ago are available for the Jazz. Keontae George will also sit for the game tonight. Now, we have a ton of NBA trade deadline news to get to that we'll get to with you guys today on the show. I'm not going to update every single deal because we were told that this was going to be a quiet deadline. It was not at all. We'll talk about the Walker Kessler storyline. Apparently, the Indiana Pacers were knocking down the door for the Utah Jazz to trade them Walker Kessler. The Jazz declined, and the Clippers stepped in and traded them Ivica Zubac, who's a very good player, Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, and 2 first-round picks headed to the Clippers, who appear to be breaking this down a little bit, but they owe their lottery pick this year to Oklahoma City, so kind of some interesting stuff. Milwaukee decided to hold on to Giannis. They then turned their attention to a 3-team deal with Phoenix and Chicago. We'll get to that as well. The Knicks lost Deuce McBride to injury, so they decided to trade for Jose Alvarado from the Pelicans to kind of grab the backup point guard. Luke Kennard is on his way to the Lakers. Gabe Vincent, who was really bad for the Lakers after a decent run with Miami, is on his way to Atlanta. So a ton to do. A ton to get to. The Warriors got involved as well. Kristaps Porzingis is on his way to the Bay Area. Jonathan Kuminga, who Steve Kerr just seemed to really not like at all, and Buddy Hield on their way to Atlanta. So the Hawks very busy. I'm not even sure who's available tonight for Atlanta to play the Jazz. We'll have to see how that goes down. All right, good guest list. Thursday afternoon style. Omar Ruiz from the NFL Network is going to join us. We will preview Super Bowl 60. Get you ready for Seattle, New England with our friend Omar Ruiz. Great day to have Richard Smith in the house. Smitty live in the studio for an entire hour. We'll break down the trade deadline. We'll talk about the future for the Utah Jazz, and we'll get to some stuff with Smitty. We'll do some national NBA with Howard Beck, one of our favorite, the hipster NBA writer from The Ringer, who joins us on a regular basis. Then, of course, it's Thursday, and that means a visit from our friends Preston and Alan Handy. Garrett, I did it. See, Alan Handy works for us now. I knew I was going to do that. Preston and Garrett Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy for a little sports court on the show this Thursday afternoon. Omar Ruiz, Richard Smith, Howard Beck, our friends at Handy and Handy, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. Hello, happy Thursday. How are you? And that guy, Porter Larson, breaking down a bunch of different topics for 3 hours during the midday. How much gas do you have left for the afternoon drive?
We're good to go. We got plenty to talk about. Trade deadline day, Super Bowl 60, Olympics started today. What do you want to go? Pro bull riding in town this weekend. We had old Cade Madsen in the studio. So, listen, I got some gas left. We're good to go, and we got plenty of topics to facilitate.
There you go. So a lot to do on the program today. Our first guest to preview Super Bowl 60 will be Omar Ruiz from the NFL Network. But before Omar stops by on a Thursday afternoon, courtesy of our friends and your friends at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 with Prize Picks.
Big game, guys, 3 days away. Big game is almost here. There's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. Big game max discount this week. Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game live in the app right now. Drake May just needs one passing yard for the max discount to win. Just add another player to your lineup. And if your picks hit, you can cash in. Step number 1, download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. Okay, here's the deal. I've been asked to share my Prize Picks picks with you guys, so we're going to do that. And if you'd like to download the app, which you should, and get the free $50, which you should, you have the option, okay? I want to underscore that you have the option to follow my play, okay? I've got a 6-pick power play coming up for the big game coming up. Number 1, Drake May, as I talked about, just has to pass for 1 yard. I feel pretty confident that's going to happen. I'm going more on Jackson Smith and Jigba, 7.5 receptions. I'm going more on Drake May, 7 rushing attempts. I'm picking Hunter Henry to score a touchdown. I'm going more on Kenneth Walker, 18.5 rushing attempts, and more on Stephon Diggs, 3.5 catches. If you'd like to follow along and pick, that's fine. But again, I'm not responsible for your decisions to bet your own money on these things. That's on you. All right. Kansas Jayhawks 2026, Cincinnati 2025, Colorado 2025, Arizona 2025, Providence 2024, Stanford in 2022, Oregon in 2022, USC in 2021, San Diego State in 2010, Arizona in 2006, and Stanford in 2002, and now Oklahoma State in 2026. So BYU goes on the road last night, and they lose to Oklahoma State 99-92. The net of it on the basketball side of things is that BYU has now lost 4 of 5 games. They've lost 3 straight. This was a quad 1 loss on the road. They do not have a signature win. They are trending towards a 5 or a 6 seed. And the net of it on the basketball side of things is they get off to a horrible start again, down 29-14. The rim protection is a problem. Oklahoma State had 52 points in the paint, 23 points on a fast break, and 21 points off turnovers. Okay, so there's the net of it on the basketball side of things. But why did I list 12 different fan bases before adding Oklahoma State to that list? Well, for the 13th time, by the most conservative estimate, a group of fans decided to engage in another F the Mormons chant during a BYU basketball or a football game. And as I've talked about before, the last time this happened, because I sent out a tweet in November, the last time this went down, it's beyond time that this is addressed. And it's beyond time that it's addressed by the decision makers and the most powerful people in the Big 12 Conference. Because that list I just gave you includes 9 teams from the Big 12. Okay, this is happening in conference play. Not like it's fine that it happens anywhere. But why do I bring up that it's happening in conference? As a result of it happening in conference, you actually have a body of folks that are in charge that are able to do something about this. I didn't necessarily bring up that it happens across the country, because who would be able to step in and do something anywhere? Well, that's the NCAA. And what have we learned about them? They can't count to 20 with their shoes on. So I'm going to put them aside. This is happening in conference play in basketball and in football. So Brett Yormark, if you're listening, and we know that you probably are, you're up, sir. You're the only one that can do something about this. The people that are in charge of the Big 12 Conference right now are the only people that can step forward and make sure that people that decide to do this actually suffer some consequences. Because until that happens, this will continue to happen. That's human nature. That's how it goes. Until this is actually something that is addressed by serious repercussions, it's going to continue to be the same cycle, which is this. BYU goes on the road to play basketball or football. A group of fans, and yes, I know we have to say this doesn't represent all Oklahoma State fans, and it probably was 20 or 30 idiot 18-year-olds that had too many White Claws, okay? I understand that. That's not the point. I know we have to say it. But I can guarantee it hasn't happened yet, but within the next hour or so, or maybe it's out there and I haven't seen it. So BYU, they go on the road to play a football game or a basketball game, and a group of idiots, whether it's kids or grown-ups or whatever, decide to launch into this F the Mormons chant. And then after the game last night, Kevin Young, to his credit, decides to address it. And excellent work by Kevin last night. I thought he handled it brilliantly. And I'm glad he actually said something, because I get that the teaching is turn the other cheek. I get that the teaching is, we're not going to stoop to their level. Okay, I understand all that. So for you LDS people that won't say what deserves to be said, I'll say it. This has to stop. And the turning the other cheek stuff, I think that's a great way to live your life, but enough of this, okay? Enough. It has jumped the shark. This is religious bigotry by the very definition of the term. And the term is used whenever there's a disparaging comment made about a Catholic or a Jewish person or Islam or whatever it is, or different races. Different religions, different races, folks that aren't necessarily from here, from different countries. There are people that are ejected from stadiums for life for doing exactly what these people are doing. Just insert Jew where Mormon is, or insert, Islam or Muslim where Mormon is, or insert a race where Mormon. Just change the term. And people are ejected from stadiums forever. Why is this allowed? I don't get it. And until the Big 12 and Brett Yormark do something about this, the cycle will continue, where BYU goes on the road to play a game. BYU fans, travel as well as any fan base in the country, and also have a footprint almost anywhere in the country. And why is that? Because LDS people no longer only live in Utah. Breaking news. There are LDS people in Stillwater, okay? There are LDS people everywhere, and the majority of LDS people want to support BYU, as they should be allowed to do. So BYU goes on the road. BYU fans travel to follow them, or BYU fans that live in the market say, wow, cool, my team is actually here. I'm going to go watch them. And as I'm watching the game last night, the camera's panning across the crowd, and maybe 30% of the audience is wearing blue, supporting BYU. And in a lot of places, it's more than that. It's not BYU fans' fault that you can't sell out your dumb arena, okay? So you look at that, and there are families there with children, and these children who don't know any better, who are they're going to primary on Sunday, suddenly are watching a basketball game, and they hear idiots chanting F the Mormons. What are you supposed to say to your kid who's turning around going, wait a second, they hate me. They don't like what I stand for. This is a problem, okay? So the cycle is that happens, and then the next day the president or the athletic director sends out some half-ass apology where it's like, hey, they don't represent the entire community. Shut up. Nothing is being done about it. And until something is going to be done about it, it's going to continue to happen. And I don't get why we have this issue in the country. Like, we allow people to walk into elementary schools with semi-automatic rifles and gun down children. And then the next day, our idiot politicians in charge say thoughts and prayers to the family. Shut up. Do something about the problems that are permeating throughout our culture that are making us unkind to each other all the time. I'm honestly so sick of it. And I don't have an axe to grind here. I'm not an active LDS member. I come from the stock, and I will stand up for my people. Brett Yormark, Big 12 Conference, you're up. Everything's on camera now. Go look at the footage and find 10 fans that are doing this and say, you're not allowed here anymore. Banned for life. We do it in stadiums when a chant breaks out about Jewish people. We do it in stadiums when a racial slur is thrown at a player. And by the way, we should. We should do that. Why don't we do that for this is my question. All right, we'll catch a break. Off the soapbox for now. Omar Ruiz will be our first guest on a Thursday afternoon. Keep it here on ESPN 700. We are 3 days away from Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara, where the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots will do battle for the biggest prize in pro football. And I always enjoy our next guest when he's able to join us. Great Thursday to have Omar Ruiz from the NFL Network on the program. Hello, Omar. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm good. I'm stuck in traffic here in San Francisco trying to get to Radio Row after another full day with the Seahawks. And it's a lot of driving back and forth, I'll tell you that.
Okay. All right. Well, that means I got to keep you for like 2 hours on the show. So that means we win, Omar. Hey, the injury today to Nick Emanwari, the safety, the rookie safety who was the defensive player of the year. I mean, I listened to him talk about it himself, and he even said he was a little bit concerned. And he has been so good for the Seahawks all year, and they kind of use him the way that Baltimore uses Kyle Hamilton, moving him all around. This to me, I mean, it feels like the oblique for Sam is going to be fine because he's been all right. Drake May practice today, but what sort of intel do you have with this ankle injury?
Yeah, there's not much different than what you were able to surmise from his interview today. That he's confident. Mike McDonald is confident. The team is confident that he'll be healthy and ready to go, or at least to be as effective as he's been all year. And obviously, the Patriots are going to try to test him and test him early. The unique thing about Nick, just the way they line him up all over the field, like you mentioned, the fact that he can rush the passer, play hard nose in the run game. He could cover tight ends and receivers, but you got to have the mobility and the strength to do all that. So, you saw that kind of viral video last night of him getting to the hotel and kind of walking with a rather significant limp. But there are 72 hours till kickoff and change. So if anybody can do it, it's a guy in his rookie year as young and athletic as he is.
So since I brought it up, I'll just ask you, because you're on the ground here, if there's any other intel about, my understanding is Drake may practice today, but of course he's been dealing with both a little bit of an illness. He's looked and sounded good, and that shoulder injury is being talked about as well. What's the latest there, Omar?
Yeah, same. I would say, come Super Bowl Sunday, I think there's an added dimension, and it's been interesting that, both Drake and Nick today were asked, are you saying you're good to go because it's Super Bowl Sunday or for any game? And it sounds like they're confident, for any game they'd be able to play given their issues. And we hear it all the time about at this stage of the game, the guys are always dealing with something, but these in particular obviously are why it's noted, because it kind of happened more recently. And obviously those two are as impactful as they are. But I think Drake will be fine. I don't think them downplaying it is any subterfuge. I think he will be good to go, and he'll be a gamer. And similarly with Nick, but although I think Nick, for the reasons I mentioned, he'll probably have to be tested a little more than Drake's will.
And ultimately, like it or not, if any of these injuries are actually something that will affect the game, the people in Vegas will probably pick up on it before anybody else does. And nothing has affected the line. Seattle's a 4.5-point favorite. The over/under remains. So let's actually knock this out one at a time before I ask you how this is going to go down. Omar, you've been coming on the show for a long time, so I'm a Jets fan. So like the Patriots being good again is not all that exciting for me, and the potential of them being good again for a long time is not something I'm super pumped about. But it looks like they will be, and you got to give Mike Vrabel and Drake May and the personnel department and this team a ton of credit. Winning 4 games a year ago, now they're back in the Super Bowl. How'd they do that?
Well, I think the way Mike Vrabel connects with the team, number one, to get the most out of them, and maximizing the talent that was there. And then you have just, for different reasons, besides Mike Vrabel, you have Josh McDaniels, who for as much deficiencies as he's had as a head coach, is just one heck of an offensive coordinator. And whether it was working with Tom Brady or working with Mac Jones and made him a Pro Bowler his rookie year, and obviously now making Drake May an MVP candidate his second year, I think that goes a long ways in terms of their offensive development. And then another newcomer, Milton Williams, I think has been every bit as impressive as the payday that he scored in free agency last year coming over from the Eagles. And I think when I look at the Patriots, I think their defense is just as good as the ones that we talked about all year in Seattle and Denver and Houston. I think by the time we started paying attention to the Patriots this season, Milton Williams was out. And so when we're looking at them, analyzing them as are they a serious contender, they were without their best interior defensive lineman. And so then when he returned and they started to dominate a little more, everyone loaded up with the excuses. Oh, well, the Chargers, their offensive line's banged up. Oh, Houston, they couldn't figure out on offense all year long. And, oh, Denver, they were without Bo Nix and the field conditions were murky. Well, I think with Milton Williams, the way that they've rallied around him, Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis both playing at elite levels in this playoffs, I think that the Patriots team is just as dangerous as any defense in football, and I think they'll keep them in the game. As some people might suggest, it could be a blowout. I don't think that'll be the case.
So the Patriots enter the Super Bowl averaging 18 points per game throughout the course of their playoff run, which is the lowest in NFL history. How much of that is, Omar, in your opinion, just the fact that they played, after they play Seattle, they will have run through 4 of the top 5 defenses in pro football. So the offensive numbers, how much is that New England? How much of that is playing the best defenses in pro football?
I think it's playing the best defenses, and I think the fact that Mike Vrabel has realized, and something that he's really leaned in, is situational football. And because of the tendency and NFL designed that way for close games to happen, they've been so good in 2-minute situations and third down, red zone, all of that. Those are the little differences. And sort of like I said, I think the defense is good enough to keep them in the game. And for me, the big storyline will be Sam Darnold. If he can continue to play clean football, he hasn't turned the ball over. And not that the Patriots, offense is going to blow anybody's doors down, but if you give them more chances, in other words, if Sam Darnold, turns the football over, the Patriots are able to get some interceptions or anything going in their favor like that, and you get this offense that, like you mentioned, has struggled to put points on the board in the postseason, you give them more possessions, then I think that, that's the key to their success and how they can pull out this upset.
On the other side, I will admit to having a rooting interest in this game. And yes, part of it is because never Patriots for me. But, Sam Darnold, he was out here in the Pac-12 footprint with Southern Cal. So we got to watch him when he played Utah a few times. And I really thought, Omar, when the Jets drafted him, that this was the guy that would end it, that he had something. Now, it didn't work with New York at all. And part of that is probably because the Jets are a joke. But it's his 5th team, Omar, and the stat that continues to blow me away as much as anything is he is now the first quarterback in the history of USC to start in the Super Bowl. So what do you make of this redemption arc that we've seen from Sam Darnold?
It's remarkable, and I think it underscores, and he's the poster child for a lot of different things now that he's on this stage and the microscope that the Super Bowl teams are under and the storylines are under, that number one, organizations, coaching matters, as much as anything when they're evaluating quarterbacks and whether they can play early on. It's also a testament and, to him, his work ethic, his perseverance, his positivity to always believe in himself. And he's been the poster child for all those attributes. And so I think what we've seen him, not only this year, but last year too, with Minnesota, that he's just sort of living up to the hype of the, 3rd overall pick, and, always had the talent. And I remember covering his pro day. You mentioned his days at USC, and it was raining during his pro day, and he still threw the football well, and in those wet and sloppy conditions. And it just feels like he's always been battling adversity, and for him to sort of, be able to rise through it and just covering him, not only with the 49ers a couple years ago, but obviously this year and this run, just everybody speaks so highly of him. Just, what a nice guy he is, how he treats everybody with kindness and respect, and all these sort of things that you want to hear from, your kids, how you want people to treat other people and all that kind of stuff. For him to be the franchise quarterback with all this pressure and to continue to output that, I think says a lot about who he is, and probably a big reason why he's had this success despite the adversity.
So, as it pertains to what we could see on Sunday, Omar, I'm going to ask you the question like this: New England wins Super Bowl 60 if what happens?
They win the turnover battle, for the reasons that I indicated with, getting more possessions, because that Seahawks defense is is legit. And as much as I talked about the Patriots defense, I think the Seahawks kind of proved week in and week out how elite they can be. So I think, for the Patriots to win the game, they're going to have to get turnovers. They're going to have more possessions than the Seahawks, and that'll be the formula for their success.
On the other side, most people are picking Seattle, so I'll just ask you the same way. Seattle's able to get it done as the favorite if they do what?
They take care of the football and remain balanced offensively. I think the fact that they have Rashid Shaheed now with that threat to go downfield, to break the game open, and obviously he's proven what he could do in special teams, but even just, you look at the NFC Championship game, the Seahawks' first possession, the 51-yard completion to Shaheed kind of really had the Rams, kind of pedaling backwards at that point for the threat that he possessed and the fact that they can be explosive, not just with JSN. So if they can just keep the ball balanced, take care of the football, I think the Seahawks will find ways to win, and Kenneth Walker is more than capable of carrying the load once again if they have to run the football consistently as well.
You referenced JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Utah football played Ohio State in the Rose Bowl when he was on their roster. And, Omar, I think it was easy to see that this kid had something. But I've got to say, I am so incredibly impressed at whether it's the work he put in or the system that he's now in. What stands out most to you about his improvement? I'm wildly impressed at what a weapon he's turned into.
Everything. I think he's just, as complete a receiver as there is right now in football, with the way that, he makes catches over the middle, and when he's about to get, lit up by the safety, he makes deep catches. He catches the ball on screens and gets yards after the catch, and he does it in big moments. He does it in small moments. He does it when he's shut down in the first half, and he stays persistent and opens things up in the second half. So I think, just the versatility that he does at an elite level, the sort of mental makeup that he's demonstrated to, and talking to Cooper Kupp, that was the thing that he expressed to me, and how he's seen JSN develop this year, is that he doesn't get frustrated, because obviously defenses focus on him, try to take him away, and he doesn't allow that to determine his attitude and his effort. And eventually things are going to break open for him. And we've seen that all year long. And that's been sort of the key to what we've seen from a superstar in the making.
All right, here's what I've been asking my Super Bowl guests over the past couple of weeks, because as you know, Puka Nacua played his high school and his college ball out this way. And I'll say the same thing about Puka that I said about JSN. Like, I think most of us thought he was going to be potentially a good NFL wide receiver, somebody that would make a roster and maybe play well. But, like, no one, I think even Puka and his family would tell you, saw this coming. Better football player, Puka Nacua or Jackson Smith and Jigba?
Oh, man, that is a tough question. For me, right now, I'd pick Puka in that he's just a little more physically, plays with a physical edge, as in, he can break tackles, I think, more frequently than JSN. But outside of that slight edge, they're right there, and it's 1A, 1B type of thing. But I do love Puka's physicality and his ability to take over the game. But, just like I mentioned with JSN, Puka can do everything as well. But I think he does that just a little bit better in terms of the physicality that he plays with.
All right, a couple of off-the-field storylines, Omar, I wanted to kick the tires with you on. And my producer is a thief of joy. He is mean to me. He is rude. Because I came in yesterday very excited that my New York Jets had done something smart by hiring Frank Reich as the offensive coordinator. And as he reminded me, you need a player to play quarterback regardless of who your coordinator is. And he's not wrong. But at least I do feel like this has the potential to be a good hire. Last time Frank was a coordinator in the NFL, he won a Super Bowl with Philly. What do you make of the decision to bring in Frank Reich as the Jets offensive coordinator?
I like it. But like you mentioned, it's all about the quarterback.
Yep.
But I think he is capable of developing, and especially just having that sole focus. I mean, I think we look at sort of the disaster of a year that it was for Bryce Young his rookie year, and you would suggest, well, Frank Reich didn't do a whole heck of a good job developing him that particular year. But I also look at, they also had McCown there, they had Jim Caldwell, and Thomas Brown was the actual offensive coordinator. They just had so many cooks in the kitchen, so many elite level minds that, probably had Bryce Young swimming uphill. But I think, Frank Reich as offensive coordinator. It's just a different level of development, more time and patience he could probably devote into developing, not just running the team. So I think for those reasons, the Jets picking him up is probably a good thing. And I just always go back to what he did with Philadelphia, winning the Super Bowl, with Nick Foles as the backup, and obviously had Carson Wentz playing as an MVP caliber type of player as well in those years, and that when he was as coordinator. So I think if he can kind of tap back into that, I think the Jets could, they got to draft the right quarterback first, or bring one in. But I think those are the things you're looking for Reich to kind of get back on track and sort of get his reputation as a play caller, a developer back with the Jets.
Wanted to ask you because, where we reside here in Salt Lake City, we don't have an NFL team, but we have a couple of teams via proximity where we have a lot of fans in the market, namely the Denver Broncos. And I felt really bad for that fan base because they finally get back to a conference championship game. They lose their starting quarterback. But not just that, they play their conference championship game on a day where the conditions basically made it impossible. Once the Patriots took the lead, nobody could do anything. I mean, Josh McDaniels called a play for Drake May to roll out and throw it out of bounds. But the future in Denver, Omar, in your opinion, looks like what?
I think it's very bright with the Broncos. Hold on, I'm trying to get into a parking garage. Let me back up. I'm going to park here for a second. I'm not sure if it goes uphill or it goes downhill. I don't want to have the call cut out if it goes down underground.
Wait, are you driving into a parking garage right now?
Yeah, I'm at the Moscone Center where the Radio Row is.
Okay.
But I'm just hanging out on the street right here. But I believe in Sean Payton. I believe in Bo Nix, and I think all the talk that Sean Payton has his eye on Bo Nix, at Oregon, and he was his guy, has all proven true. And I think when you look at Russell Wilson and the big cap number that he had, and that coming off the books, and now they could elevate that roster even more. I think they are in position to be a number one type of seed consistently for years to come, and especially the next couple years when they have that money back available and before they have to pay Bo Nix. So I think the future is very bright for Denver, not just with those 300 days of sunshine per year they have in Colorado, but with the Denver Broncos.
So before I set you loose, a couple questions about the coaching carousel and kind of how things have gone down and your thoughts on what could be next. Because in addition to a lot of Bronco fans, we do have a lot of Raiders fans here. And there's a lot of pressure now because they have the number one overall pick, and the Mendoza kid appears to be really special. They go Clint Kubiak, who is still coaching because he's going to be in the Super Bowl with Seattle. Do you like this decision? Because there's a lot of pressure when you have the number one pick and you're going to bring in a young quarterback.
I do like Kubiak. I've been able to chat with him a couple of times this week and just sort of impressed with his ability to just stay calm in all situations. It seems like, whether he had a big crowd of media around him or just kind of one-on-one talking to people from, you go to these opening night kind of media sessions, you get like college students, and just like his poise to handle one after the other. In addition to the acumen that he's shown as a play caller this year, but just his ability to kind of handle people, I think says a lot. I don't know how charismatic he is, but I don't know if that matters as much. And covering Sean McVay a bunch like I have, and then covering Mike McDonald a bunch, recently, they're very different people, but they're both authentic and they both connect with people. And I think a lot of people said the same thing about Jesse Minter, the Chargers defensive coordinator, now Baltimore Ravens head coach, that authenticity. And if he can stay connected to that, as far as commanding a room, I think he'll be good as Raiders head coach. I think from an offensive perspective, you get Fernando Mendoza, Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers there. You have your own version of triplets like the Cowboys did in the 90s. And I think that's the foundation to your success. But you have to deal with, Max Crosby and what all that entails. But certainly I think they're headed in the right direction. And I think when you kind of talk about all those things that I just brought up, you can start to see the vision for what they might have as an organization. And you got to have a connected organization, a vision, all of that going in the right direction. before you have any chance at success.
Last one, I'll set you loose, because when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, you better get it right, and you better get it right quick, because, I feel like Josh will be able to play at a high level for another 5, 6, 7 years, but you never know, as Andrew Luck taught us. I felt bad for Sean McDermott. I thought, look, I get it, because there have been plenty of teams that have decided to change coaches even when they're good, and oftentimes that works. But they elevate Joe Brady as opposed to going out of house. What do you make of this, Omar?
It's interesting because I agree with you. I was a big Sean McDermott believer. I thought he was a really good coach. I thought a lot of the times they had injuries, and he still was able to, get to the playoffs and win games in the playoffs. And a lot of that has to do with Josh Allen. And I'm not so sure that, what Brady brings to the table necessarily is what you automatically think, okay, this is going to get them over the hump. At the same time, I can see that, Josh Allen has been there a number of years. They haven't gone to the Super Bowl yet. They don't want to sort of stay stagnant. So, kind of have to have fresh blood for Josh Allen. The fact that they have the continuity, you feel like, at least from an offensive perspective, they're not going to waste any Josh Allen years. So, for both sides, I see, why they would do the moves, but I agree with you. I think Sean McDermott is a great coach. And I think, next year, after taking a year off, if he wants to, just like if Mike Tomlin wants to, they could be like the Mike Vrabel of this year, where they come in, establish winners, and turn around a program right away.
Omar, thanks for the time. Even though you were fighting some traffic, you're a good man. Enjoy the game, okay?
Okay, thank you. Always good to visit with you.
Omar Ruiz, NFL Network. They've got a special 8.5-hour edition of NFL Game Day Morning Super Bowl Sunday starting at 7 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time. Let me ask you, do you think there's anybody out there? Look, it's a big game. It's a big day. It's the final football game. Do you think there's anyone that's going to consume 8.5 hours of pregame coverage, then watch the game? That's like
somebody.
It's like a 13-hour obligation.
Somebody's going to do it. Not me.
People love football, man.
Not me.
Oh.
But hey, to each their own. To
each their own. But here's my question. What does that person's life entail? This has to be a single person with no partner, with nothing else to do, to sit there. Now, I will admit, my younger days, like when the Red Zone channel first came out, I was like, wait, what is this? I can sit here and watch every scoring play. I may have spent a good 5-6 hours on the couch watching Red Zone channel. I can't do it anymore. I've got to break it up because I'm going to go crazy.
Right.
8.5 hours pregame, 4 hours coverage. Yeah, almost a 13-hour day. I
want to be clear. I've probably had 13-hour sports watching days, like NCAA tournament, where the game started. If you're Mountain Time, like you're 9:30 a.m. or so, you've got games going, and then they're going all through the night. Like I've watched sports all day before, but when it's 60 minutes of football, and as you mentioned, 7 hours and 45 minutes of pregame or whatever. That one's tough for me.
The first 2 days of the NCAA tournament, man, nothing better. My two favorite days on the sporting calendar.
It's so fun.
It is so fun. All right, we'll catch a break. Richard Smith live in studio. We'll talk about what the Utah Jazz have done to reshape their roster and hopefully give the fans something to cheer for in the future. We also have Howard Beck on the show. We'll do some national stuff with Howard. Sports Court later on. So we got a busy Thursday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Selfishly, this is my favorite U2 song. Any old U2, I don't know, like 1994 U2 is my favorite U2. Smitty is live in studio, U2 aficionado. How are you, buddy?
Aficionado. Is
that fair to say?
Well, I really like them. I've seen them numerous times. It's great. You know, they're a great band to see live, and that's I always tell Porter that I like to have that as my what do we call that, Porter? Is that my walk-on song or my
walk-up
like
song?
That,
yeah.
Song or what is that? Yeah.
That's my favorite U2 song. So I just looked it up. It's anything before 1993, because then in '93 they released Zeropa, and that was just weird. I actually went to see them in Vegas when they were supporting that album, and that was when they had the band walk out of like a lemon, and it was just like, all right, I appreciate that you're trying something new. But all my favorite U2 albums were released before 1993.
Well, now is that so? So when was it? I don't know the year, but the iconic big structure that's out at the planetarium.
I think so. Yeah.
Out off of 100 and
like out south. Yeah.
The aquarium. I'm sorry, the aquarium.
Okay.
Yeah, that big thing that you see that looks like a giant spider or something. That is the structure that U2 toured with on one of their famous tours, and then somehow the aquarium or someone associated with the aquarium here in Sandy somehow was able to get it, buy it, donated something, and they ended up having it, and they wanted to put it there just as a symbol for people driving by an I-15 could immediately see something, go, oh, I guess that's where the aquarium is. We should get off this exit. So that's what that is sitting there. That originally belonged to U2 on one of their tours.
Are you pulling my leg?
No.
Oh, okay.
Straight up stuff.
Because I have now.
And I forget what tour it is.
Okay. I don't know what tour it is either, but I famously do not go south of 33rd. Okay.
That's the Scott Layden rule. Yeah, I got it.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, look, Draper is Lehigh.
Yeah.
Mill Creek is Provo. Anything south of 33rd is Utah County to me.
Yeah.
But I do have a brother who lives in Draper. And so whenever I drive out to go to dinner with them, I see this thing, and I have never known until this moment what it was.
Yeah, and so for our listeners who aren't familiar with this approach to life, Spence, who spent a lot of his growing up years on the East Coast, there's a famous drawing from the New Yorker about a New Yorker's view of the world, and it shows the East Coast and New York City and Central Park and all this, and then everything west of the Hudson River is just barren land, okay? That's how Spence Checketts views Salt Lake City. Anything south of 33rd South is just barren land. It doesn't exist. The whole center of his world is just between 33rd South and the avenues in Salt Lake City. That's as far as he goes.
I have nothing to add. You're correct. Olympus Cove is Spanish for it.
That's right. There you go.
And there's no reason for me to go out there. I love all my listeners. Please listen, even if you live south of 33rd. I'm not going to come hang out with you, is all.
Hey, I'll tell you what, Spence, and someday you got to go out and venture out and drive out to Daybreak. If you want to see something new, you go out to Daybreak, and that's a whole. I mean, that's a whole city. That's like
that's basically St. George to me.
Yeah, that's.
I went to the RSL practice facility to interview Jason Kreis and Harriman.
Yep.
And next time I'm going to find a direct flight. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's out there.
Yeah, it is.
You got it.
It is. All right, enough of the Utah geographical conversation. That's not why people are tuned in. The Utah Jazz, Richard Smith, have elected to utilize some of the assets they've been stockpiling to get, as you like to say, a real guy. Jaren Jackson Jr., 26 years old, two-time All-Star, Defensive Player of the Year. My take has kind of been well documented, so I'm just going to open up the space. What do you think?
Well, I think this is, Spence, this is exactly the kind of move that the Jazz have been setting themselves up for. When you go into a full-blown rebuild and you're trading away main players, as the Jazz did, several years ago, and you're stockpiling draft picks and assets, what you're hoping to do is get lucky in the draft somewhere along the way, if you can do that. And then also, but you have all those assets so that you have them all sitting in the bank, so to speak, and you're just waiting for the right situation to come along where you can pounce on it and try and get in on a player that might be established that maybe you couldn't get in on another way. For example, we've often talked about how difficult it is for the Jazz to attract free agents and real free agents to come to Salt Lake City. That was always we always felt that was a myth. We proved it to ourselves when I was in the Jazz office that's not true, but that is a prevailing feeling, I think, among fans and in general, that can't happen. But what you want to do when you're an organization and you're in a position of rebuilding, you want to put yourself in a position so that if a player becomes available and a team is doing something, look, Memphis is doing right there in the middle of doing something like the Jazz did several years ago. The Jazz had arguably a top 5 team in the NBA. They decided to tear it apart. They got rid of Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, Joe Ingles, Bogdanovich, blah, 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 and they tore it all down. When the other teams like Minnesota, like Cleveland, they were in positions to strike at that time to get a star player like Gobert in Minnesota, like Mitchell in Cleveland, and we've seen how those guys have affected those teams. So the Jazz, in doing their part, now they're the team on the bottom waiting for someone to do a similar type thing. You don't know if it's going to happen. You don't know when it's going to happen, but you want to be in a position to be able to make a move when something does become available. And sometimes you can sniff it out ahead of time, Spence, and get your ducks all in a row and be ready to go. And sometimes it literally hits you in the back of the head as a complete surprise. And even when that does, you got to be ready to react. In this scenario, the Jazz, Jaren Jackson, who's a real player, he's an all-NBA player, Defensive Player of the Year, NBA All-Star level player, coming right into his prime at age 26, under contract, a big number at $45, $48 million a year for the next 3 years, then a player option for the 4th year, but he's under contract for multiple years. So that kind of player is the kind of guy that the Jazz would hope to be able to talk to during free agency. Can they get to those guys? You never know. In this scenario, they're able to back up moving some guys who weren't really contributing to what they're doing currently, put in some draft picks because of their big draft capital stash that they have, and get a guy who's under contract who you don't have to talk into coming. You don't have to, kowtow and take him to dinner and all these kind of things. He's coming, and now you just have to make sure he can fit in with the guys you've got. And he really changes the outlook of the team, because if you can sign Kessler, which is going to be the next big move in the summertime to decide whether or not to do that, then you're talking potentially about next fall opening night having a front court of Markkanen, Jaren Jackson, and Walker Kessler. That's a big-time group right there. That's a competitive group. They're all in their 20s, okay, at different points of their career, but obviously Markkanen, a proven all-star, Jaren Jackson, a proven all-star, and Walker Kessler, I think, is a very solid and going to be an improving player. Now you just have to worry about your backcourt and whether what you're going to do with Ace Bailey, who looks like he may be a solid player for you, Keontae George, how he affects your rotation and all that. But this really moves the needle significantly, in my opinion, to make the Jazz a competitive team going forward, going into next year, and also one that they can build on for several years going forward. So this is really, from my perspective, is really a home run for the Jazz getting a move like this.
I agree. And one of the things I often talk about, Smitty, and one of the things that I always love talking to you about is how quickly things can change in this league. And now you have to be ready for the changes. And sometimes it's a long game play, and fans are wondering, like, well, wait a second. We have all these draft picks. We have all these young players. We have all this cap space. Why aren't we doing anything with it? Well, sometimes there's nothing to be done. But then something happens. And then you're in a position to capitalize on a team's decision to rebuild. You're in a position to capitalize on a team's decision to pivot. And ironically enough, Ja Morant's immaturity has led to Memphis deciding that group wasn't worth it. So they trade Bane a year ago to Orlando, and you're going, well, wait a second. Because at one point you thought Ja, Bane, Triple J, all right, like that's a group.
Yep.
You got a shot to do something there. So they moved Bane last year, and then the stuff with Ja this year, of course, the coach didn't like him. And again, Ja Morant is an unserious person at this point in his life, and maybe that changes. But I don't think anybody thought Jaren Jackson Jr. was available because at the age of 26, maybe he's the guy you hold on to. Move Bane, see what you could get from Ja, and maybe we can build something around Jaren Jackson Jr. But it's interesting, and I want you to kind of walk us through how these conversations can change and go down. I don't have any inside sourcing here, but Brian Windhorst reported that Golden State is the one that called about Jaren Jackson Jr. And then they pivoted and they focused on Giannis. So then word kind of started to creep throughout the league like, no, Jaren Jackson Jr. is available. It's not just Ja. So then, probably is a scenario where this guy says that guy says this, Danny hears this, Zanuck hears that. And like, okay, well, wait a second. If this guy's available, we feel like he fits with what we're trying to do, right? So talk us through kind of generally speaking how suddenly something changes with one team and a team like Utah in the position to capitalize can just kind of step forward.
Yeah, well, what happens, Spence, is you've got several guys that they would have Austin Ainge, they would have Danny Ainge, they would have Justin Zanuck making calls. You're making calls to all 29 teams,
like at all times.
Yeah, you've got a board set up. You've got whether it's electronic files now, whatever. At one point, we used to literally have sheets of paper up on a wall, and that we used to update every time we talked to somebody. Would put the date and what the conversation was to always remind us of whenever we were on the phone with somebody talking, we could glance and look and see, well, we just talked to Milwaukee about such and such the other day or whatever, and you try and keep all those things straight. So you've got a running log of all the stuff that you're talking to all the other teams about. And if you have relationships, as Danny Ainge does, as Justin Zanuck does, especially on the agent side, as Austin Ainge does, has cultivated over the years, you can talk to everybody else on other teams, and depending what the tenor of your relationship is with any of those guys, you can get some of that side information, because a team may say, hey, look, hey, Spence, you're my buddy. I know you guys are trying to do something in Utah. Let me just say, I got off the phone with Miami. I think if you made a call to Miami, they might bring something interesting up or something. You go, oh, really? Oh, okay, or whatever. And so you always follow through on those things because you never know what it might yield. Danny Ainge is famous for making calls around the league, famous for calling everybody, famous for offering 10 cents on the dollar to people, and when they don't bite, he goes, okay, yeah, hey, we'll talk to you later. Okay, man, all right, be good.
Trader
whatever.
Danny,
yeah, and he just moves on.
Yep.
And so this kind of thing, you're exactly right. All the focus this year in terms of potentially getting a solid top-line player off of another team regarding Memphis has been the focus on Ja Morant because everybody knew they were disillusioned with all the off-the-court stuff. Now he's some injury stuff the last couple of years. His attitude, okay, he's a real player when he's out there. He can affect winning, but you have to deal with the other stuff. So now everybody's focusing on that, and you're exactly right. I would think most teams would look at it and say, well, they're going to try and do something with Morant now that they moved Desmond Bane, but they're going to hold on to their anchor, which is Jaren Jackson, much like with the Jazz outlook in the last year or two has been, yeah, we try and do something, but we got to hold on to Markkanen as our anchor, right? As at least the first building block. Mm-hmm. So now maybe people aren't calling to ask about Jaren Jackson. So, however that went down, I don't know, but when you have an opportunity like that and you find out somebody might be available, you can offer, whatever it makes, and then it's off to the races. And for the Jazz, I really don't think in terms of what they have in their treasure trove of assets and draft capital, the players they moved to me were somewhat insignificant. That's just my opinion. Maybe the two young guys might turn into something some point. That's okay. But we're moving them to get a guy who is already a major player in the league, okay, who's under contract, who's at the right age for us. check the box, check the box, check the box. This kind of guy. This is the guy you would want to go after in free agency if you could somehow get to him and have a conversation with him. Now all you have to do to access him is to get something done with the team that he's under contract with, and apparently that's what they did. And I really think the Jazz underpaid, in my opinion, in terms of the draft picks. They gave him 3 draft picks. Okay, everybody talks about the 31 draft pick with Phoenix. We have no idea what Phoenix is going to be 5 years from now. Nobody knows that. So anybody who projects that, good luck to you. Saying, oh, that's that's a valuable draft. I don't know what that's going to be in 5 years. But you can use that, and you still have 8 draft picks in upcoming drafts. Like, you haven't hindered your draft situation at all if you're the Jazz. Plus, you held on to your pick this year that they're going to maneuver right the next couple months, and they're going to make sure they're in the bottom 8 so they can hold on to that. Now maybe this year that ping pong ball comes up, and all of a sudden you got the first pick or whatever it is, even if it's a top 3 pick with those guys that everybody talks about. So now you potentially could add that guy, whoever that is, with Jaren Jackson, with Walker Kessler, presumably coming back on a new deal because he hasn't played this year. So that's, in essence, 3 new guys who are all big-time guys adding to your lineup that's been playing this year with Markkanen and George and Ace Bailey. And all of a sudden, that's a very interesting team and a very solid team to go to work with, and one that gives your fan base and your organization hope that, hey, now we can get going. Now we can get on the train and see what happens.
So let's talk about, in your opinion, the pieces that either fell into place or were identified that motivated the Jazz front office to make this trade. Because, I whether I was on KUTV with our guy Dave Fox or I did a couple of interviews with other radio stations across the country, they all asked the same thing. What are the Jazz going to do prior to the trade deadline? And I said, probably nothing. I said I would love it if they did something. I would love it if the front office actually did something bold, but I don't think they're going to because of all the young players, and they're going to long game this thing, and they're going to hold on to their asset this year, and they're going to see if next year maybe Taylor or Cody looks different. So that's what I thought that they were going to do. But in your opinion, was it Keontae's growth this year? Why did they do their calculation and come to the conclusion we're ready to go full bore next season? Let's make this deal.
Well, this is, Spence, this is a deal that you're going to do in the way that they did it. You're going to do this deal anytime you can get this deal.
Oh, cool. Okay.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah.
I mean, if you can get a Jaren Jackson, like if you're sitting here and you're projecting forward and you're looking at this coming summer and you're trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with our team for next year, okay? You would draw up a game plan and you would say, okay, who are the kind of players we want to try and add to our team who already exist in the league? So who would we like to add? Richard Smith. Yeah, you go first. Who would you like to add? Yeah, I'd like to get Luka Doncic. Okay, all right, we'll put that on the board. Thank you very much.
Good
Richard.
idea, Smitty.
Yeah, good idea. Okay, anybody else? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of conversation you have. So you have a list of guys that you would want to add to your group that you say, if we could get that guy, that would be a big bump in what we're trying to do. So you had that, and a lot of them, like in that example, they aren't realistic, right? Mm-hmm. But they are guys that you say, I just want to make it known. I would want Luka Doncic if he becomes available. If Nico Harrison decides, I don't want him, and we call Nico, guess what? Oh, this came out of left field. Yes, It did. Thank you very much, Richard Smith. That was a great idea, because you want to cover all your bases.
Right.
So you go down that list. Is it Luka Doncic? Is it Anthony Davis? Is it Stephen Curry? Is it, whoever it is, Jalen Brunson now? Is it whoever the list is? And you go, yeah, any of those guys, want any of them, okay. And you make calls. And the other guys on the other end of the line go, I'm sorry, who are you calling about now? Mm-hmm. Yeah, just wondering if Steph Curry, what you guys are going to do with him.
I've been watching Wembanyama lately.
Yeah, what are we going to do with him?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, whatever. And so you check the box. You go,
yeah,
I called him. So you do all of that, Spence. Well, in that scenario, Jaren Jackson would have been a guy on that, tier 1 list. In other words, yeah, if we could add a Jaren Jackson type guy, yeah. Don't know if we can get Jaren Jackson. He's under contract. They like him. He's an All-NBA guy. He's a foundational guy for a team. Okay, they're not going to let him go. But if we could get someone like Jaren Jackson,
yeah, that's
what we need. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I talked to so and so, and it sounds like maybe Jaren Jackson himself is a bit. What? This is like several years ago. With Brooklyn had the team that was going to win 4 out of 5, the next 5 championships when they put Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and James Harden together, and everybody said, "Well, there goes that."
It's not even playing anymore. Yeah.
And what happens? They only play 16 games together because of a variety of situations, and each guy goes out the door in different manners and all that kind of stuff. And so you never know what's going on with another team. But you want to put yourself in position to attack and get something for your team that makes sense for you, that you've already thought out, you've already laid it out, you've already said, yeah, this, because I'll bet you, Spence, obviously I'm not in the rooms, so I can't tell you for sure, but I'm willing to bet that there were a lot of teams who discussed John Morant, because he's a big-time difference maker when he's right and he's going, and just like Damian Lillard was in his day, right? So you had a lot of discussions, I'm sure, a lot of teams, John Morant, and you had guys in the room going, yeah, I like him, but we get him, man. That is a lot of heavy lifting, and we have to make sure we the collective, we in this room are all on board and we understand what we're getting into, and that includes the coach, and that includes the trainer, and that includes the massage guy, and everybody's got to understand what the lay of the land is. And I'm sure a lot of those conversations ended up with that group saying, I don't think he's worth it. Yeah, I don't think it's worth the gamble. Yeah, okay, cross him off the list. And I believe that's probably what happened in a lot of rooms. And so people would discuss John Morant, but they weren't willing to do that because of all those ancillary things going on around him. A guy like Jackson, he becomes available. You can put up a sale of stuff like the Jazz did to get something like that. To me, that was like, if I was in the room and we were in the middle of that discussion, I would be looking at different guys in the room going, are we actually discussing this? Like, are you serious? Like, are we discussing like whether we want to do it or not?
Call him and say yes.
Like,
this
is
now,
automatic.
Yeah.
Like this is a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Get the guy on the phone. We do it. Throw in another draft pick. Well, it's going to take 5. Throw in 5. Like, what do we do? The NBA is a star-driven league, and you have to have a couple of top-line players to be competitive. He's a top-line player. You can get him. This is why we have all this stuff in our bank, in our hall. What's it going to take? Do not shortchange him. Don't shortchange him. Don't let him hang up the phone. If he's hesitant, hey, we're going to throw. Hey, Billy, Zach Kleiman. Let me tell you. Hey, let's throw in another pick. Yeah, we got another pick we can throw in. Okay. Yeah. No. Don't hang up. Don't hang up. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And I've been in many of those conversations over the years because if you have somebody like that and you believe in it, then you want to make sure you don't come up short unless the other team just gets some unbelievable offer from someone else and you get outbid, which happens. But the Jazz were smart in doing this, and I'm excited for them because I think this is exactly the type of player they need. It's exactly the type of move they needed to make at this time, and whether they went out and made it happen or it's something that fell in their lap or it was something in between, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they executed it, they got it done, and I'm excited for them. I think it's a big-time move.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well said. Some good insight there. Before we catch a break, let's discuss the fit. One of the interesting things, and I got a text. It's funny. Around the trade deadline time, I can tell if the Jazz have done something based off of if my phone is blowing up. And I'm just my son was in town, so we were kind of spending some time in the midday, and I'm driving him up north, and all of a sudden, text calls coming in. I'm like, either somebody has died or the Jazz made a trade. Thank goodness the Jazz made a trade, right? And a lot of the texts were, does he play the same position as Walker? Is there redundancy there? Can they play together? And I think a lot of people just assume because Jaren Jackson Jr. is 6'10" and has won Defensive Player of the Year and is a big kid that he's an awesome rebounder. And the reality is he's not. I mean, he's a career like 5.5 rebound per game guy. And so Memphis drafts the Zach Edey kid, right? And I think they felt like, he would fit in really well with Jaren Jackson Jr. And Triple J has gone on record himself saying he actually doesn't want to play center. He likes to be more of a power forward. He's one of maybe 5 or 6 guys that can cover all 5 positions in an elite way. Like, he's a great rim protector, but you can get him out on the perimeter. He can switch, pick, and roll. But rebounding is not one of his better skills. So it does feel like playing next to Walker, if that's the decision to bring Walker Kessler back. And according to reports, Indiana tried to trade for him today, and the Jazz said, no, we're good. My guess is Walker will be back. Lowry at the 3. Ace at the 2, Keontae. I mean, we'll get there in a moment. That would be the tallest starting lineup in the history of pro basketball. But is that how you envision Jaren Jackson Jr. kind of fit in? And what does that look like?
Yeah, it could be. You know what it does too, Spence, is in the Jazz, it's going to be a tough deal for them. Although they get the ultimate say, they get the final say on the Walker Kessler situation, because this summer he'll be a restricted free agent, which means, for our listeners, means that Walker Kessler and his agent can go out and solicit offers from any other team, but the Jazz will have the right to match any offer and be able to retain him. So the ultimate decision will come down to the Jazz, what the numbers are and whether the Jazz want to go in on those numbers. Mm-hmm. So his agent is going to know that. So they're going to know, the Jazz are in a situation where, let's see, Jaren Jackson, Markkanen, Ace Bailey, whoever the new kid is going to be, and now Walker Kessler. Boy, that's an interesting team. That my guy adds a lot to that. So Walker Kessler's value just went up because they're going to see that the Jazz don't want to mess with this potential. Now, will it work? You never know till it gets on the floor.
Yeah.
But you want to give it a chance. And so from that perspective, I think Walker Kessler is going to be in a good position negotiation-wise. And then the Jazz are going to obviously, at some point, they're going to have to step up and say, yeah, we can swallow that big number, whatever it's going to be, and we're willing to go in that first apron or whatever it's going to be, because we like the prospect of what this team might be able to do going forward. So that's going to be the next interesting cog in the machine come July for the Jazz.
Post Malone and Jelly Roll are taking over Rice-Eccles Stadium on July the 28th. Text now to win a pair of tickets, 877-353-0700. More details on our app at ESPN700sports.com. All right, what should we have you text? 877-353-0700. Do you like what the Jazz did during the trade deadline? How about that? Give me a hot take on the Jazz during the trade deadline at 877-353-0700.
You know what they should do? They should phone in and tell you how much weight Jelly Roll has lost the last 2 years. That's what the question should be. Have you seen that guy? Did you see him at the Grammys the other night?
I didn't. I'm not a big Jelly Roll guy.
Man,
so he's lost some LBs, huh?
Man, like big time. Yeah.
All right. Text in how much weight Jelly Roll has lost. That's fine. 877-353-0700. All right. Coming up next, as I continue to say, Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to find out that he has a bad back. We'll talk about what the rest of the season is going to look like, and then I'll ask Smitty what success next year looks like for the Utah Jazz. Also, a bevy of other big trades have gone down. We were told this was going to be a quiet trade deadline, and we were lied to. One more segment with Smitty coming up on the other side of a Thursday drive right here on ESPN 700. So I don't usually have the text line pulled up. That's more of a midday show thing, dating back a number of years. But Smitty dropped a question. In order for you to win Jelly Roll and Post Malone tickets, how much weight has Jelly Roll lost? I don't know who Brady Bigler is, but here's a funny one. He's lost about a Spence and a half. So apparently Jelly Roll has lost a lot of weight.
I have no idea what it is. I just know that he probably has to look at changing his name from Jelly Roll to Jelly None or something. I don't know. He looked like he lost a lot of weight to me. I don't know what the number is, but I like Spence and a half. That's a pretty good number.
The guests coming in, we had 300 pounds, 129 pounds, 195 pounds. Porter, do you know what the correct answer is?
We may need verification, but it sounds like he's lost like 300
Well, hold
pounds.
on. We need to come up with a winner before we say. I just wondered, do you know what the actual answer is?
Well, we'll just get the first guy who had the correct one.
All
I think it's close to 300, though.
877-353-0700. Well, now that I have the text line open, you can also give us a hot jazz take. I don't usually read texts on air. Or say something nice about Smitty, who's live in studio. All right.
Roll in.
As we talked about last segment, one of the initial fears that I saw expressed, whether on social or talked to some friends that are Jazz fans, was, well, wait a second. We're 6th right now in the lottery standings, and Jaren Jackson Jr. makes us a lot better. And if we're outside of the bottom 8, we lose our pick to OKC, to which I said, well, Jaren Jackson Jr. is about to fly to Salt Lake to find out that he has back issues. Right? So, look, Austin before the season said we will not be manipulating lineups in the name of draft capital, and he lied to us because that's common practice in professional sports. Sorry, kids. But the rest of the way, Smitty, what is this going to look like? Because they did not include this year's pick in the deal. They keep it, and with, 3 to 5 awesome players available, it sounds like they really much want to be involved. What do you think the rest of the year is going to look like?
Yeah, so they have about 30 games left, 28 games. It's going to be the same thing as last year. They're going to move guys around. They're going to have and just to clarify for our listeners, Spence, I know you've used the phrase, he's going to find out he has a bad back. He doesn't really have a bad back. You're just using that as a euphemism for him being told, hey, you're sitting out tonight.
I hope that was obvious, but if it wasn't, thank you for the clarification, Smitty.
Yeah, well, he just came off the injured list. He had a leg contusion and stuff. Anyway, but they're going to be moving guys around. It's all going to be in the name, as it has been, of player development, of trying to find out what combinations work with what, who's playing with who. That maybe yields us some good results on the floor, but you're right. They're going to be careful about making sure they don't get across that so-called cut line of the bottom 8 because losing that draft pick. Because especially you make a move like this, Spence, that gives your group in the room, and then also gives your fan base some modicum of hope that, okay, we're trying to improve the team, and we got an all-star level guy coming in, and to pair with Markin in, and hopefully Kessler comes back, and so now you want to, at the same time, you want to strike take another big swing with a top line draft pick. So you're going to see them messing with the lineups. You're going to see guys playing less minutes, in games. Maybe they try and skirt around that, where Markkanen plays, but he only plays 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes or whatever. I don't know how they're going to do it, but you're exactly right. If that's what they want to do, okay, and that's what everybody says they should do, then that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to see how they manipulate that for the rest of this year.
All right, now let's get into, and look, I am on board with you. I feel like this is an awesome deal. I gave the Jazz front office a ton of credit. Yeah, I think Jazz fans should be more juiced about next year than they have been for 4 years of Jazz basketball. I'm excited to cover a team that's actually serious about competing. I'm not saying this is a bad move, but I will ask you what you think needs to be added to the group in order to kind of round out the roster, right? And so, as you referenced earlier, and we just outlined, they're going to hold on to this draft asset. And if, for once, we actually get a little lottery luck and Lady Luck shines upon us, and the Jazz get the #1 overall pick, Is a Darren Peterson, A.J. DeBonsa exactly what the doctor ordered for a roster like this? Or in addition to that, what other additions do you think they need to make prior to the start of next season?
Yeah, either of those guys, and Cam Boozer's a guy. I don't know if Cam would fit in with how the Jazz are going to be currently set up, but you have to look at it. We would always say, Spence, at the end of the discussion, the debate, the arguments, whatever it was, our responsibility, and Jerry Sloan would always remind our group of this, is to get the best talent we can get on the team, and then it's up to the coaches to develop them, to figure out how to play them together, and all that kind of stuff. I remember one year coming out of the first NBA Finals in '97, we had a solid group, obviously led by John Stockton at the point guard and Howard Isley backing him up, was very good NBA backup.
Yep.
And we had a draft pick toward the end of the first round, and we used a draft pick to take a guy we thought was the best player available, who happened to be Jacques Vaughn.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that automatically meant Jacques Vaughn was going to be the third point guard, and but we felt like we have to take the best player, and then tomorrow we'll worry about how we play them together, or maybe we make another move to trade someone else or whatever it's going to be. But you're exactly right. If you get one of those top picks, you're going to add a major talent in your group. The thing the Jazz are missing right now, is a true, even though in today's day people don't want to say a true position player like a point guard, but they need someone who is a floor general, who's a playmaker, a Mike Conley type player in his heyday, someone like that who can get the ball to the guys on the floor, who knows what's going on, can orchestrate the deal, can do that. They're trying to make Kente George into something like that. The Collier kid really racks up the assists, but he's kind of wild. He doesn't really have a feel.
He just can't shoot
what's going on.
I mean,
and again, you're always trying to get the perfect player. You're never going to get the perfect player, but for the Jazz to round up their group, to respond to your question, they need to get someone in the backcourt, who is a playmaker type, who can orchestrate an offense, who also isn't a sieve on defense, who can play somewhat, stand up and guard his man, and we're gonna see how that plays out. That may be a free agent thing. That may be another trade thing in the summertime where they try and go after a guy that can fill that bill. But also, let's not get carried away either, Spence. Getting Jaren Jackson, having this kind of front line, if it ends up being that, if they re-sign Kessler, and so with Markin and they have those guys, this isn't going to be, a 55-win, top 3 team in the West next year. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that Jaren Jackson adds a lot of different things to the mix, exactly the kind of stuff the Jazz need in their lineup, and that's a big hole that he's going to be able to fill for them as they continue to build out their team, be competitive, and start making inroads to being one of those top-level teams in the West, and this really helps them in that regard.
So we are going to make some history on the program, Smitty. This is a first. This is our 7th year. Coming up in August, we will turn 7. And I have never read a text question on air.
Okay.
I don't take phone calls. I don't take texts. I had a radio consultant tell me once that the sooner a radio host opens the phone lines or reads text from fans, the sooner I know how lazy he is. And so I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do that. Love our listeners, love the fans, but I happen to have the text line open, and I asked if anybody had something nice to say about Richard Smith. Well, our friend here, Porter, I'm not supposed to read the entire number on air, right? Like that's, okay. 7825 sends in, Smitty is awesome, and this is applicable for today because I talked about the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade in context of Spencer Haywood, Adrian Dantley, and the following trade, which you were a part of. So Texter sends in, Smitty is awesome, would love to hear about his involvement in a similar midseason franchise changer, Jeff Malone for Jeff Hornacek.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that?
Yeah. Well, what I remember, this is in the day before the internet, This is the day before cell phones, okay? This is in 1994, February of 94. What I remember was that we had our meetings, we had the usual stuff going on, whatever. It was a Monday, if I remember the day of the week right. Monday or Tuesday. Anyway, Scott Layden in our meeting at like 3 o'clock that day. The trade deadline at that time was at 7 p.m. Salt Lake City time. We got anything going on? What's happening? What do you think? Nah, I don't think anything's going to happen. He said, why don't you head out, and if anything happens, I'll call you, but we're not, I don't think anything's going on. I said, okay, but I got to sit here in the office. Because, again, no cell phones, so you're sitting at the office at your desk with your desk landline phone in front of you. Okay, hey, we going to go together? Yeah, go to dinner tonight. Yeah, when this gets done at 7, let's meet at Michelangelo's over in Sugar House at 7:30. Me and you and Marcia and Linda, our wives, and we'll have a little dinner to celebrate the trade deadline. Okay, so we go. I go home. Boom, nothing's happening. Linda and I go to Michelangelo's. It's 6:45. It's 7. It's 7:10. It's 7:15. It's 7:20. Scott doesn't show up. No cell phones. I can't get a hold of him. I try calling home. No answer. Okay, well, I guess we're just going to eat ourselves. So we just order whatever. I get home at 9 o'clock. I try and call him. Nothing. Can't get a hold of him. Finally, at like 10 o'clock, I turn on the news. Oh, the Jazz are making a move. They traded Jeff Malone for Jeff Hornacek and the Green kid. And I go, what? And so I finally get a hold of him late, and he says, yeah, the call came in from Philly at 20 minutes to 7 and said, hey, are you guys doing anything? You want to do anything? Go, well, we do this and this. And they go, have any interest in Jeff Hornacek? Do we have interest in Jeff Hornacek? Yeah, is Jeff Hornacek available? Well, yeah, we're trying to move some money around, some stuff, whatever. And again, you never know how these things play out, Spence, because other teams have different agendas that they're working on at the time. At that time, for them, they were trying to figure out, and I may have this wrong, so somebody would need to check me on. No, it would be wrong, yeah, because Barkley was already in Phoenix by then.
Yeah.
But it had something to do with their roster, a couple other guys on their roster at that time that they were going to need to pay that summer, and so they didn't think they were going to be able to pay Jeff Hornacek that summer. So they were willing to move on and try and get someone who was under contract, and they were calling around to see if you had anything that might work. And that was we'd be training a 2-guard for a 2-guard, and Jeff Malone was under contract, and Scott made that deal, got a hold of Jerry and Larry, and was quickly like, hey, we can get this done, but we got to get it done in the next 10 minutes. And boom, boom, boom. And then he was in the office the next couple hours with the league office and the lawyers, making sure that we got under the deadline of the 7 o'clock move, and were able to make that deal happen legally from the league perspective. So that was a last minute move that changed the course of the Jazz franchise the next several years.
That's pretty interesting that it was that close to not happening.
Yes.
20 minutes before the death is the Hornacek trade that led the Jazz to 2 NBA finals.
Yeah, and that stuff, that is not unusual, Spence, because what happens is teams, they're trying to get, the most they can, out of any move they want to make. And I always joke about, guys running the NBA teams, they're all guys who went to college, but they're all guys who found out on Monday in their biology class, that they have a test on Friday. And so every guy does what? He waits till Thursday night and then starts cramming for the test on Friday. Well, the NBA trade deadline is always the same way. Everybody talks about stuff for weeks leading up to it, but nobody wants to do anything ahead of time because they're waiting to see if they can get another 10 cents out of the other guy, whatever, and they all wait till literally the last hour, and then boom, 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 all the phones start going crazy, and everybody's trying to get their best deal. And so that's something like the Hornacek deal that is not unusual in terms of how NBA teams can operate from year to year during the trade deadline.
Was Jeff just the type of player that we talked about with Jaren Jackson Jr., where you're just kind of like, because I just looked this up. I remember Barkley was traded to Phoenix in a deal that sent Jeff to Philly.
Right.
And then Philly wanted Jeff to be their point guard. And the year before you guys traded for him, he averaged 7 assists per game as their point guard, which was a career high for him. So I'm wondering what you saw as far as Jeff and John playing together, or was Jeff Hornacek just the type of guy like, no, just go get me that guy?
Yeah. Jeff was the solid culture guy, could play 1 and 2, was going to fit right in the 2 spot, was going to give us that backcourt rotation that would give us added strength and ability, and we knew that he and John would click both on the court and off the court. So you knew from a cultural perspective and how you want your team to operate, we knew those guys would be in lockstep with each other right out of the chute. So that kind of a thing, Scott was very comfortable once he got a hold of Jerry and Larry Miller to make sure they were okay with it, and didn't worry about any of us who would otherwise might weigh in on it, because he knew that this was like a slam dunk type move that, we just got to make this move if we can get it done.
Right.
And the clock literally is running, so we just got to do it. I got to use my gut. We do that, and the rest is history.
So let me ask you this. We got a couple of minutes left before we catch a break. When it comes to some of the biggest trades in Jazz history, and over the course of 40 years, you were a part of most all of them up until, this new iteration has taken over. Is there a chance that some young buck right now who wants to get into radio is going to be sitting here in 25 years talking about the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade the way we talk about the Jeff Hornacek trade? Is there a chance?
Well, you would hope in a perfect Jazz world.
Yeah.
I mean, that means that it worked out. That's the important thing for Jazz fans to think of, the way to think about it is this. The Jazz were setting themselves up this year with several of the veteran players they brought in: Kyle Anderson, George Niang, Kevin Love, Yusuf Nurkic. They're all veteran guys who are on expiring contracts. So their whole purpose of bringing them in this year at a so-called a gap year, if you will, in terms of their competing, was that this summer those guys would present to the Jazz somewhere in the neighborhood of anywhere from $40 to $50 million in cap space to operate with this summer, to maybe go get a free agent if they could pair somebody with a top draft pick that they're hoping to get in June, and then talk a big-time free agent this summer to come and play with this new kid and with Markkanen and bring back Kessler, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Now what they've done is they've just moved up that free agent thing from July in trying to figure out who can we get for that kind of money. They've moved it up to February, and they got the guy, and he's signed, and that's Jaren Jackson. So that's their big-time free agent that they would hope to try and get in the summertime. They just got him in February. He's under contract. That's done. We got a guy. Now we try and figure out the draft, and then we'll have some money this summer. Not a lot, because they're going to have to sign. If they sign Kessler, that's going to take up another big number. So that this is really their version of getting a summer free agent, but they're able to do it in February and already got him under the fold, and that's a big time move.
All right, Smitty, last thing. We moved back east in 1991, and my father left the Jazz in 1990. So by the time the Jazz Bear was introduced in 1994, we no longer lived here. You spent 40 years with the organization, and I spent 7 prior to coming back here to ESPN 700. And throughout my 7 years, I had an opportunity every year to take one of these fun Jazz trips that they do. And during the course of one of these trips, I was able to get to know the original Jazz Bear, who unfortunately passed away, John Absey. And sadly, Smitty, you and I have sat here over the past year, and we've said goodbye to Frank, and we've said goodbye to Barbara, and we say goodbye to another
Gary Briggs.
And Gary Briggs, that's right, Briggsy. And so today we say goodbye to another member of the Jazz family, who, if you didn't know, first of all, he was unbelievable at his craft. It has never been the same since, for whatever reason, they made the decision to move on from John in 2018. The memories of the sledding down the stairs, like, what are you doing? He was named mascot of the year multiple times. But When the bear costume came off, what should people know about John today as we say goodbye to John?
Well, he was the consummate professional in what he did. He was such a high energy guy in the costume, and everybody knows what he did during games. And look, for a while, Spence, you could argue in his heyday, the most favorite people in the Jazz organization were Hot Rod Hundley and the Bear.
Uh-huh.
Those guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. John Stockton and Karl Malone. Yeah. Okay. All right. Whatever. But you meet people in the mall, people in the grocery store, people on the street. The Bear, Hot Rod. Those are figures in the Jazz organization that the average fan related to in whatever way it was.
Yeah.
And John, for all the stuff he did in the costume and all the stuff he did on behalf of the Jazz organization as the Bear for a quarter century, he was 10 times that guy outside of the costume. He was the most generous guy. People have no idea how many different charities and schools and hospitals that he would work for on his own, just trying to help people out. He had so much energy, such a positive guy, always doing anything. You talk to Ron McBride about him. Mac would just talk about him all day about how he would respond to anything he asked him for his foundation, show up anytime, anywhere, and all of that. And John did so much for that, and for being the kind of person he was. We're just our hearts are broken that the pancreatic cancer got him here at age 58, and we're going to miss him, and all of our heartfelt condolences go to Shauna and the girls and his family. He's going to be deeply missed, but what a great figure for the Jazz organization. He really needs to be honored somehow by them in the organization, in the arena, because he was a big-time guy for a long time when the Jazz were relevant.
Well said, Smitty. Yeah, sad news. Fought hard for over a year after such an awful diagnosis, but I'll echo the sentiment to his wife and girls, and sending all the love we can from those of us here at ESPN 700. All right, my friend, great insight today. I knew you'd be dynamite on a day like today, so thanks so much for everything, and we'll get you back on soon, okay?
Hi, Spence. Thanks, man.
All right, the great Richard Smith, 40 years with Utah Jazz. We'll catch a break, but before we do, new client on the show, and I'm excited for this because I work with them. I work with them personally and have worked with them for a couple of years, and as a result of following their program and protocol, I'm in the best shape I've ever been in as a grown-up, and you can do the very same thing. So January is now behind us. Maybe you set a New Year's resolution to get in better shape, lose some weight, or maybe lose a lot of weight. Well, it's not too late if you haven't been able to get it done now. And for me, a couple of years ago, I made a goal that I wanted to get in the best shape I've ever been in as an adult. So cleaned up some habits, started eating clean, and was exercising every day. And after a couple of months, I was frustrated with what I perceived to be a lack of progress. So I had a friend ask me if I had ever supplemented testosterone before, which I had not. And he recommended that I go see Game Day Men's Health for a free consultation. And they're offering you the same free consultation. In fact, they're offering you the same deal they give me, which makes this really affordable. So the consultation is a little bit of blood work. It doesn't take long at all. And then they sit down with you and they go over the results and say, hey, you're good here. You could probably use some help in this area, and here's what we have to help you out. For me, that was testosterone, and then also some of their peptides. Now, they have semaglutide, they have tirzepatide, all the weight loss stuff, but this deal makes their weight loss products much cheaper than any other place. So if you're looking for that, you should go to them for those products as well. Because what they're offering, if you mention ESPN 700, so go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com, schedule your free consultation, okay? Do that right now. And then if you tell them you heard me talking about it on the show, they're giving you 50% off your membership all year. It's the same deal they gave me. It makes this stuff incredibly affordable. Now, you still have to exercise, you still have to eat well, but I can promise you that if you do what they ask you to do and then they actually lay out this program, if you follow it, it works. Because within a couple of months after working with them, I had made like 10 times the progress than I did in the months prior when I wasn't utilizing their services. I can promise you it works because I've done it, okay? So Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. That's Game Day Men's Health. Schedule your free consultation. Tell them you heard me talking about it when you go in there. They're going to give you 50% off all year. Now, it's February, so you get 11 months at 50% off. Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, South Ogden. Find the closest one near you and tell them I sent you to Game Day Men's Health. We'll catch a break. Howard Beck joins us next on ESPN 700. Howard Beck isn't ready for Gaslight Anthem. I know that he's not. I know that I've blown his mind today. 4 o'clock hour of the program starts with my guy, Howard Beck. Howard, I know you're not ready for Gaslight Anthem today.
Why would I not be ready for Gaslight Anthem? I'm always ready for Gaslight Anthem. Give it to me straight into my veins.
All right. They're so good. I'm glad that you and I are of one mind there. Hey, good news. We don't have to talk today about whether or not the Jazz are going to trade Marketing or if Keontae's a point guard. I get to ask you about an actual transaction where the Utah Jazz have brought in Jaren Jackson Jr. at the age of 26. Howard, what do you think?
I like it. In the abstract, I'm curious what else they're doing. It's been interesting this week to watch the Jazz make that move and then the Wizards make their moves for Anthony Davis this week and Trae Young a couple weeks back, because these were both teams that were committed to rebuilding / tanking, and suddenly out of the blue, both of them hit the flip the switch, saying we're pivoting basically. And in the Wizards case, it's two former All-Stars, one of them, of course, aging and oft broken in Anthony Davis. And in the Jazz's case, it's Jaren Jackson Jr. And normally, too, like when you decide it's time to turn the other way, like it's time to pursue a new agenda, a lot of times it happens in the off-season. And a lot of times it happens with getting a guy who's going to be like the new engine of your team. Jaren Jackson Jr. can be the anchor of your defense, but he's not going to be your offensive engine. And that's fine because they've got Lowry and they've got Keontae. So, like, it's just an interesting pivot, interesting timing, interesting player. He's got his flaws. They spent a decent amount of draft capital, but not a ton to get him. I like the trade. I don't know what it says about where they are or what's next yet. That's what I'm curious about. And then, not for nothing, but you don't want – the reason these things usually happen in the offseason when you go from tanking to not tanking is, especially in this case – you don't want Jaren Jackson Jr. to help you win too many games in the next 2 months because you've got a top 8 protected pick you're trying to hold on to. And so they have to navigate that as well.
Well, the way I phrased it, Howard, is my best guess is Jaren Jackson Jr. is flying to Salt Lake to find out he has a bad back, right? Like,
yes, I agree.
If they didn't really value the asset, they may have put it on the table, and they've already been manipulating lineups in the name of draft capital. So whether it's Marketing playing 15 minutes a night or Jaren Jackson Jr. taking a long time to pass his physical, my guess is we're just not going to see the Jazz take any sort of front-facing step this season because they have to hang on to that pick, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you decide it's time to stop tanking, you got to at least make sure that you come out of it with some really great pieces. And this is a great draft. They're in a position to have one of the top picks potentially. We'll see how the lottery balls bounce. We'll see what their record is when all is said and done. But yeah, when you go get Jaren Jackson Jr. and when you've held on to Lowry, despite everything that you and I have discussed, they're not listening to us, and maybe for the better. But you better come out of it with at least one blue chip prospect. Now we will see what Ace Bailey becomes, and we'll see who they get in June. But hey, maybe this is exactly right. Maybe the timing is exactly perfect. Veteran scorer in Lowry, really, quickly blossoming young star potentially in Keontae, and Walker Kessler comes back. Jaren Jackson Jr. comes in to help shore up that front court, and between Ace and draftee to be named, maybe you're back in business then. But you got to nail this draft, and you got to make sure that you don't ruin your position in this draft.
Right, and only time will tell what the draft manifests. And back in business, Howard, in your opinion, sounds like what? Like success next year? I want to be very careful about setting expectations because my understanding of some of the other teams in the West is they're also trying to win. So when it comes to what success looks like next year for this team, what do you think about that?
So, we've got the rest of this season to go. We've got a draft to go. We've got an off season to go. And some of these teams are going to look much different by the fall. But at a glance, the Thunder aren't going anywhere. The Spurs aren't going anywhere. The Nuggets, the Rockets, the Wolves, the Lakers, no matter what they do with Austin Reeves or LeBron, they've got Luka, so they're not going anywhere. So that's 6 teams that I think are already likely playoff teams for, next season. The Clippers are taking steps backwards, so maybe you leapfrog them. The Warriors, look, Jimmy Butler will come back at some point. They got Porzingis if he's healthy. Steph is staying. Draymond's the Warriors are still going to be in the mix. The Suns, the way they played this season, they'll still be in the mix. The Trailblazers are looking better, and they're another one of those teams that's kind of turned the corner. The Mavericks are going to get Kyrie back. There's just a lot of teams to navigate through and to try to leapfrog. So if I'm going to – this is way too soon for us to be projecting next season, but what does the success look like for the Jazz? Competing for a play-in spot. That's it. They're not going to be a top 6 team. I don't see that. That would be a very big leap for them considering how tough the West is. And, but I would say, it's easy for me to say, I would say that's fine. If after 4 years of rebuilding and a pretty rough go of it, step one is back in the play-in on their way back to hopefully getting to the playoffs, that's fine. The West is really tough. But I think the bigger issue is, and this is not to pour cold water on anything, because I don't know what the Jazz are going to get in the draft, and I don't know what else they may do this summer. But not only are the Thunder really good and also still really young, but the Spurs just got here, and they're not going anywhere for a long time. And, the Rockets are somewhat reliant on Kevin Durant, but they've got obviously really young talent too in Thompson and Şengün. So I just, the teams that are at the top, you've got a lot of work to do to try to get into that mix.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I would hope nobody is realistically expecting the Jazz to take that type of jump next year because there's so much. And I think one of the things I do like about it, Howard, is that he is 26, right? So when you look at the bulk of what the Jazz have at this point, and, as you pointed out, we have to wait and see what the draft manifests. But Ace Bailey is 19. I think some of the ancillary pieces like Isaiah Collier and Kyle Filipowski are a little bit, expendable if they wanted to go in that direction. Keontae is 22. Walker is 24. Lowry's about to turn 29, but, Sensabaugh 22. I don't know if you include Cody Williams in the future. But the fact that Jaren Jackson Jr. is 26 means, if we do see incremental growth step by step, if we finally get some lottery luck that ends with Peterson or DeBonsa, if they utilize some assets to get one or two other pieces, then maybe, 3-4 years down the road is where we can reasonably expect them to throw punches with the best teams in the NBA. But I just think it's good news out this way that we finally can kind of see this plan crystallize a little bit, because I think there's just been a lot of frustration.
Yeah, and I would just say, too, Jaren Jackson Jr., really nice player, from all accounts, really good guy, too. Part of some very good Memphis Grizzlies teams that won 50-plus games back-to-back seasons at their peak. And, great defender, perennial defensive player of the – well, he's been a defensive player of the year. He's been a defensive player of the year candidate and a perennial defensive all-defensive team candidate. And I think the ideal kind of modern big, right? He can shoot the three at one end and he can defend the rim at the other. Awesome. That is a really nice piece to have, and there's not a lot of guys like that. He comes with a very large contract. That is part of this too, and that will play into future Jazz decisions because it's going to be difficult, and especially as some of the young guys get to their second contracts. But he's an asset. Now, look, there are some blemishes. There are some frustrations with Jaren Jackson Jr. the last few years. He gets in foul trouble a lot. He doesn't rebound enough for a guy his size. And that's been the frustration for Grizzlies fans and Grizzlies coaches, and that's going to be the same probably for Jazz fans before too long. But, you don't want to dwell on the negative here. There's a lot to like about getting him. I am curious – and I'm curious your thoughts on this and how you've interpreted this, but Markkanen offensively is certainly, got the skills of a three. Defensively, he's not a three. And I think typically his most effective position has been the four. But if you're going to have Markkanen and Jackson and Walker Kessler presumably re-signed all out there together, you're going with a huge front court, but I have some doubts about it. Now, the other thing is, though, you can stagger those guys over the course of a game. You can start them together and then mix and match and have any two of them out there at any given time, and you're probably good. But I am interested to hear how they plan to navigate that.
Yeah, and this also means I think they believe Ace Bailey can play the two, who's also 6'9", right? And Keontae 6'4", Ace is 6'9", Lowry 7'1", Jaren Jackson Jr. 6'9", Walker 7'2". I view this as a really good step in the right direction, but a very incomplete puzzle and a picture that still needs to crystallize a little bit with some additions. Because Keontae has grown, but the decision-making, it's better than it was a year ago, but that's a very low bar because it was so bad a year ago. So it's better, but their need, and look, you get one of the top 2 picks, you grab Peterson or DeBonsa, now it crystallizes. But, like the Jared McCain or Kobe White, some of the players that were available on the perimeter that can score and make plays for other people, they need one or two other pieces on the perimeter, ball in hand play, and I guess we're not supposed to say point guard, offense initiator that actually can make good decisions. You know what I mean? That I still think they're missing one or two pieces in that direction.
Yeah, and it's too soon to nitpick over that because
sure.
This is a team that went through the teardown. After you do a teardown, you're just trying to accumulate talent, any kind of talent. Does it fit? Does it not fit? Do we have every single box checked in positions? Whether we care about who cares? Just get talent in, and then figure out the rest later. Well, we're getting to the stage of trying to figure out the rest. It is now getting close to later, and those answers will come, I think, in the months to come.
All right, moving off the Jazz, I said this earlier after, and look, I think we all thought Cooper Flagg was going to be very, very good. I don't know that anybody thought he'd be this good this soon. Outside of Wembanyama, he might be the best young building block, and so I get what Dallas has elected to do. But what was your reaction to the AD trade, both sides? And do you think they've also done some calculations to believe that maybe Kyrie needs to be moved from?
The AD trade was sad, to be honest. It was just sad. The guy played, less than half of a season over the course of a year with them. He was supposed to be the big payoff from the Luka Doncic trade, and he did not obviously live up to any of that. There's a reason that Nico Harrison was fired a few months ago. And then he's just moved off to a Wizards franchise that, honestly, I don't even know what to make of this. Are the Wizards still tanking, but with Anthony Davis because they know he's never going to play, and Trae Young they acquired and he's not playing? I have no idea. Is this the new Wizards? Trae Young, Anthony Davis, and then obviously Alex Sarr and Koulibaly, and they're going to get a high draft pick too. But I don't understand their end of it at all. So it's just for Anthony Davis to go from LeBron's co-star, helps win a championship in LA, to the centerpiece of the most criticized trade, most controversial trade in NBA history. And then a year later, they're just offloading him, just sending him out with a bunch of other stuff, D'Angelo Russell and Jaden Hardy and random pieces, and they're getting back a bunch of random pieces. And it's a concession. It's just a concession that, we got a lot of bad vibes hanging over us from a really stupid trade, and we're just moving on. I don't know what the Mavericks will look like next season. Presumably Kyrie is back. Cooper Flagg has been awesome. That is the saving grace for them, obviously, and that was just dumb luck. How they're building around Cooper Flagg at this point is the really important part. Derek Lively presumably comes back healthy next season too. They've got some okay pieces, but Kyrie's in his mid-30s and coming off of serious injury. So I don't know what to make of the Mavericks. I don't know what to make of Anthony Davis's career. I don't know what to make of the Wizards.
All right, there are so many transactions. We were told this was going to be a quiet trade deadline. It's been the exact opposite. So instead of a lot of these bit deals, let me hone in on a couple of sizable ones. So one of the assets the Jazz gave up in this deal was a 2027 pick that will be the most favorable of Utah, Minnesota, and Cleveland. Okay. I want to know how you read Cleveland's decision to move on from Darius Garland and bring in James Harden. And here's why. Because I feel like this isn't being talked about enough. And I can speak from personal experience. Donovan Mitchell probably will leave because, and so I wonder if they have that knowledge in the back of their minds that, okay, Donovan, who's under contract next year, is going to leave via free agency when he can. And so, therefore, they get off of Garland's contract. They bring in Harden, who's in the last year of his deal, and they're actually planning on tearing it down to start over. Because if that's the case, that 2027 asset might be pretty valuable as it pertains to what the Jazz gave up to get Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, that's a little bit conspiracy, okay? And I was vaccinated, so everybody calm down. My question is: Are you reading that the same way, or what do you think Cleveland's motivation actually was?
No, I think Cleveland is doing everything possible to try to keep Donovan Mitchell, and I think they felt like they were floundering a bit this season, even though lately they had started to turn the corner. And Darius Garland, he's very often not healthy, and when he is healthy, he's a bit of an up and down player, really talented young player, and if he can, stay on the court and develop a little bit more in LA, the Clippers might have a really great young piece. And he's 10 years younger than James Harden, and the Clippers certainly have to be starting to think about the future and, post James Harden and post Kawhi, even if they had not traded James Harden, because everybody was set to expire in another year anyway. And the Clippers are setting themselves up to try to, be in play in 2027 for free agency, for whatever. So this whole era was coming to a close, the Kawhi era, and they still held on to Kawhi. But I think the Cavaliers, I hate to burst the bubble of your dreams of the Cavs suddenly delivering, or maybe not dreams, but just that being the big pick. It's not. Donovan Mitchell, if they flame out again in the playoffs this year, could I see him, or if he doesn't click with Harden, sure, anything is possible. He's already been there longer than I think everybody anticipated when the deal first happened. All the rumors were that he wanted to go to New York, and I think he did, but the Cavs became really good really quickly, and he decided to stay. I think that Harden raises their ceiling, and I'm not a Harden guy, but dude is still incredibly productive. And, if he and Donovan Mitchell can figure out the partnership, just like Mitchell and Garland had to, I think they'll be fine. And I like all the other moves the Cavs made. They got deeper. They picked up Keon Ellis, who's a nice defender from the Kings. They picked up Dennis Schroeder, who's a nice spark plug off the bench from the Kings. I like what they've done. And I think the Cavs are in better shape now than they were a week or two ago. But I also would place some asterisks on that because I just never know how to, forecast James Harden's production, especially in the playoffs.
Follow up. Do you think we landed on the moon?
Not recently. You mean like back in the 60s?
Yeah. I mean, just kind of kicking the tires to see where you're at here.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, I personally didn't, but yeah, somebody got there.
Okay, whatever, Howard. I never saw Obama's birth certificate, but we can move on. Let me ask you about Porzingis to Golden State. It's interesting, and look, Jimmy Butler will be back at some point, as you referenced, and if I'm Mike Dunleavy, I'm trying to do whatever I can to make sure, as long as Wardell, Stephen Curry is a part of our ecosystem, we are as competitive as possible. He's had health issues, obviously, in Atlanta and in Boston as well. But what do you think about what the Warriors did? How do you think it's going to work?
Obviously, caveats, again, because Porzingis has had a tough time staying healthy, and he's had this very strange illness over the last year, starting when he was still in Boston, where he gets fatigued and he's just had limited minutes, and he's just, they've had a hard time first diagnosing this thing and then dealing with it. All that said, in the abstract, I love this deal for the Warriors. Kuminga had become obviously a headache there. He was never going to be, a trusted member of that rotation. They needed to move on from him. They dragged it out way too long as it was, and they finally just ended that. It was a nightmare for all of us because we had to cover it. Like it was the most ink ever spilled on the potential trade of a fringe rotation player. So they offload him and Buddy Hield. They get Porzingis. Porzingis is perfect for that team. The idea of Porzingis anyway, again, he's got to stay healthy. But if he's out on the court, like now Draymond Green doesn't have to play center all the time. My co-host on the Real Ones podcast, Logan Murdoch, made, I thought, a great analogy when we were talking about this earlier today, which is it's a little like when they got Andrew Bogut. Now, Bogut is, more of an old school, like plodding kind of center and was more of a playmaker, great from the high post as a passer, but fit really well there and allowed Draymond to play at power forward. And then Bogut was still, great there to protect the rim. Porzingis is skinnier, taller, and shoots the three, which Bogut did not, and is not quite the passer, but he's going to give them rim protection and size, and he's a really selfless player. Like, I think he's a Steve Kerr kind of player. I think he's going to fit in perfectly there. They just have to get him healthy and keep him healthy.
All right, before I set you loose, of course, the Giannis story was out there, and it should be because he's Giannis, and he's not 50, he's 31. And I can, like, if I'm John Horst, I've got one crack at this thing. And part of me believed that this was the reality where he would wait, because when you're going to trade a guy like that, you got to get as much as you possibly can. And in the offseason, there will be more available. The Knicks stuff was out there. The Warriors stuff was out there. The Heat, Minnesota. How close do you think this was to happening, and how do you think this ultimately ends?
I don't think it was ever close. I think the Bucks were, if I had to read the tea leaves a little bit here, and again, this is going to be more a little bit of interpretation on my part, so just to be clear, this is not intel. I think the Bucks were simply doing everything they could now to see what the market was, to see what's out there, what the offers might look like. And if they were blown away, cool, maybe they make the deal this week. But I think probably what they were doing is gathering intel, because the best time to trade Giannis is after the season. The best time to trade him is when a bunch of teams that, may not have all their draft capital now, but will after the coming draft. Teams that don't think they need to be in the Giannis sweepstakes now, but maybe will change their minds. Like, I don't think the Rockets or the Spurs are going to get in on this, but what if the Rockets or the Spurs or even the Thunder flamed out in the first round, or somebody gets injured or whatever? Like, you're going to have more bidders in the mix in the offseason than you have right now. You'll also know what the draft order is. And that's important to the Bucks in particular, because the Hawks own the rights to this swap. It gets complicated, but the Hawks are going to get either the Pelicans pick or the Bucks pick, whichever one is better. And then the Bucks are going to get the one that's not. So it would be nice to know the draft order and also to know who else. Like, if you're going to trade Giannis, maybe you want to trade him to the team that wins the lottery. And maybe the team that wins the lottery would rather have the young guy. That's possible too. I'm not saying that that's realistic, but know the draft order. Know where every slot is, because you may want to target teams that maybe don't need the young guy, and you'd rather trade Giannis for a package that includes a top 5 pick in the draft or top 6, whatever it may be. There's just a lot more optionality once you get to the offseason. So it always made more sense to me that this Giannis deal was going to happen in the offseason. I never thought it was going to happen this week.
We got an optionality. That was my goal, to make you say optionality once today, Howard. Love it. All right, buddy. I appreciate the time. We'll set you loose. Busy week, and we'll chat soon, okay?
Sounds good, and you should know, Gaslight Anthem having brought me in, tomorrow night I'm going to see a band called Antarctigo Vespucci, whose drummer is Benny Horowitz from the Gaslight Anthem.
Wait,
so,
say the name of that band one more time.
Antarctigo, like Antarctica, but with a G-O at the end. Antarctigo Vespucci, like Amerigo Vespucci, who is the one who discovered America. And this is named. That's why we're America, because we're named for Amerigo Vespucci. There you go.
That is a perfect name of a band for Howard Beck to go see tomorrow night, my friend. So you enjoy that show, and we'll chat soon. Thanks, bud.
All right, Spence, take care.
All right, the great Howard Beck. What was the Airborne Toxic Event, I think, was the band that he brought?
Correct.
Like, just saying that name makes me feel like a pretentious musical snob.
Airborne Toxic Event.
Antarctigo Vespucci.
Also known as the windstorm off the Great Salt Lake.
Indeed. Oh, you're not wrong there. All right, time now for a PGA Tour update, the leaderboard. This is the tournament where everybody just goes and gets smoked and watches people play golf. The Waste Management Phoenix Open. Chris Gotterup is your leader at 8 under. Then it's Matt Fitzpatrick at 6 under. Nikolai Højgaard is at 5 under. Pearson Coody, that was my pick to start the tournament, 5 under par. Max McGreevy, Kevin Roy, Daniel Berger, Jake Knapp, Keith Mitchell, and Sam Stevens at 4 under par. Where is Tony? Oh, I don't like this when I scroll down and I don't see him, and I don't see him, and I don't see. Oh, dear. Tony Finau. Oh, my gosh. He's not 2 over. 3 over par? Well, so is Brooks Koepka. No, Tony, two over par. 2 over par. So is Scotty Scheffler and Wyndham Clark. Holy smokes. So, like, 3 of the best golfers in the world did not play good golf today because, as I understand it, golf is hard. So we'll see if Goddard can hold on. But there's your WM Phoenix Open, Waste Management Phoenix Open update. Want to remind you, you can get custom fitting at You Into Golf by Worldwide Golf for the new Cobra Optim drivers. The new Cobra Optim is the first driver to customize POI and MOI, experience straighter drives and more robust distance. You Into Golf by Worldwide Golf. Get there. That's your PGA Tour leaderboard update. All right, we'll get back to some of the Super Bowl storyline. Super Bowl 63 days away, and the latest on the Jazz and the NBA trade deadline during the 5 o'clock hour of the program tonight. But coming up next on a Thursday, as we are often wont to do, a little sports court with our friends over at Handy and Handy. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. It is Sports Court time. We do it every Thursday, right about now, with our good friends, Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Gentlemen, happy Thursday. Are we excited for the Seahawks to smoke the Patriots on Sunday?
Let's go.
Hey, Spence, you've obviously been reading some stuff and hearing a lot of crap out there.
Well, I'm a Jets fan, Preston, so I'm just crying my tears at night that your Patriots are awesome again.
There are Patriots fans, and every other fan in the country is a Seahawks fan right now.
I don't know. I mean, look, a lot of Super Bowls, man, a lot of success, twice as many as any other team since 2001, Preston. So you chose a great team to cheer for as soon as they won their first one with Brady. Just kidding. All right. I'm thrilled that we're talking about this because I've honestly only heard about it, and I want you to fill us in. So UVU is being sued by $1 million. And they've got a really good basketball team this year, and they may not be able to play in the tournament. I've only lightly kind of got into this, so you tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, and we're reading what's come out recently. So UVU, who is part of the WAC conference right now, announced about a year ago they're jumping to the Big West. And we know teams are bouncing around in conferences all the time now. And now the conference is suing UVU, claiming that they have refused to pay $1 million exit fee to the WAC after announcing its plan to move to the Big West Conference last year. Well, apparently there's been some back and forth prior to this lawsuit where the parties tried to resolve this, and UVU president came out with a letter and basically said, we ain't paying the $1 million fee, and the conference the director of the conference, of the WAC conference, wrote back and said, hey, this is part of our bylaws. Whenever a team leaves our conference, it's part of our bylaws, it's contractual, and you have to pay $1 million exit fee. And we've seen that in a lot of these conference reshapings recently. And so, apparently UVU has a legal basis for this, and, things can work their ways out in lawsuits. But the significance of it right now, what you mentioned, Spence, is that UVU is tied for first in the WAC conference, and what they've said as part of the lawsuit is their failure to pay has rendered UVU, a member institution, not in good standing, and as a result, UVU is not permitted to participate in conference championship events, NCAA championship events, or appear in conference-sponsored television, radio. So that's we're right on the threshold of this right now, and so the lawsuit has been filed. It'll be answered. It hasn't been resolved. Whether it will be resolved in the future or near future to let them play or, hammer out the details of it and just come to a compromise. But it's really interesting that UVU is taking this stance route. And like I say, I think they've probably gotten legal advice on this, why they shouldn't play. And it'll be interesting also if they don't pay and it's still in the lawsuit, how firm the conference is on that and how sticking to it and won't let them show up at the conference championship.
All right, Garrett, over to you, bud.
Look, I don't know how big UVU's athletic budget is, but my initial impression is that $1 million didn't sound like very much. I mean, we've talked about on this show, not just between the old Pac-12 and Mountain West teams, but the big story last year was Clemson and Florida State wanting to leave the ACC. That case ended up settling, but their exit fee is $165 million if they want to leave the ACC right now. So, I mean, I don't know. In order to move on, go to the Big Sky, they might want to look at some negotiation on this is my 2 cents.
Garrett, how relatable. $1 million, not a lot of money. Well, great. Okay.
I knew that wasn't going to sound very good.
I'm just teasing you. All right, to the world of boxing. Floyd Mayweather Jr. suing Showtime and a former exec for $340 million, which I don't know about you, doesn't sound like a lot of money. But go ahead, you're up.
Yeah. Speaking of big money, right? I mean, I forgot this. He earned $250 million just for the one fight with Manny Pacquiao.
Yep.
Crazy money. So, he had huge money. He had an agent who, and again, this kind of blows my mind, but had a verbal agreement with his agent for many years that he would take a 10% cut. And so he enters into this agreement with Showtime for his fights, and they're making these payments over the years to his agent, who's depositing the money actually in various accounts, taking his cut, allegedly, and then giving
Mayweather his share, I guess, which should be 90%. Well, years later, Mayweather finds out that his agent actually had been taking these reimbursement checks, totaling into the tens of millions of dollars. And so his lawsuit's interesting because, as I'm sitting here talking about the agent who's been taking his money, this agent is not a defendant in this lawsuit. Instead, this is a lawsuit against Showtime, and it's a $340 million lawsuit, like you said. And he's basically saying that, hey, you guys helped facilitate this scheme to defraud me of my money, and you guys knew or should have known what was going on. This should have thrown up red flags for you that these transactions were kind of weird, unusual, how they were depositing this money, and that it wasn't making it to me. So I think it's an interesting case. I'm really curious to know more. We'll find out about why this agent's not involved in the lawsuit. But it's, again, big money here talking about with Floyd Mayweather.
All right, Preston, what do you got, bud?
Yeah, when I started reading about this, I'm like, why isn't his agent named? It seems like he was part of the misappropriation there. And another interesting fact about his agent, he doesn't use any technology, no emails, no text, anything. Everything is by paper, which should throw up another red flag, that he does everything documented and he destroys documents. So, what he did is set up an account similar to a client trust account. The money went in there. He took his portion. I don't know if Floyd was minding the kitchen there. He was getting so much money anyway, but surprised he's not named.
Hard to believe that it has been, coming up on 4 years since the news broke about Michigan State head football coach Mel Tucker being relieved of his duties for what was characterized as a inappropriate relationship. I guess the show's 7 years old, and you guys have been coming on for that long, for sure. But there is an update in Mel Tucker's suit against Michigan State. What's going on with this one?
Yeah, Garrett, I think we've been coming on Sports Court for about 12 years, 13 years, something like that.
There you go.
Long time.
Very nice.
Long time. But Mel Tucker, the background is this guy was hired from Michigan State, given about a $100 million contract. He was a really good coach. Well, it came out that he'd hired this consultant, Brenda Tracy, brought her on to talk to the team about a number of things. She's a sex assault victims advocate, and she would talk to the players, come in and give talks about sexual consent and different things surrounding that, and basically tell the players, hey, be careful, don't do this, you can get in trouble, just to help them through this area of their life. Well, it came out later that there was an inappropriate relationship between her and Mel Tucker, and there's two sides to this story, what she alleges and what he claims. This came to light, and as a result, he was fired for cause as the Michigan State coach. And following that, she filed a couple of lawsuits against Mel Tucker. I think it's two. I read two articles here, and so I'm a little confused. Maybe Garrett can shed some light on it. But one of them was a claim for defamation, breach of contract, breach of or tortious interference. She claimed that he intentionally tried to ruin her image when these things came out, claiming that she had made these things up and alleged as part of a way to extort money from him. Well, these lawsuits are going along, and Mel Tucker got a victory here. The lawsuit against him for defamation, the judge dismissed it, and the dismissal is pretty brief. It says that they were barred by statute of limitations, which kind of blows me away because I think it was filed in 2024, and so I don't know the statute of limitations, but also it said there was no factual issue for a jury to consider. Basically, the judge looked at this, and it was probably a motion for summary judgment that based on all of the facts that have come in through discovery, depositions, interrogatories, things came in, the judge looked at it and said, yeah, if these facts went to the jury, they're going to decide this way, and I can decide this from a legal standpoint. I think she also filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against him. I think this is a separate thing, and that was actually dismissed as well. So he has a pending lawsuit against Michigan State. We've talked about this a number of times where a coach gets fired for cause, and obviously Michigan State's position is, yeah, you were doing this stuff, and this is outside your contract, and it makes us look bad. And his claim is you're just listening to one side of the story because he claims that the relationship with Brenda Tracy was consensual and there wasn't sexual harassment involved. So that one's still going on.
All right, Garrett, over to you, bud.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is, something like this really destroys both of their careers. Of course, Mel Tucker's, but hers, right? With his comments, Tucker's comments said it was a consensual relationship, right? And here she is, this advocate for consent and respectful, relationships and this sort of thing, right? And he's saying, hey, while on the one hand you're telling our football team this, you're engaging in this relationship with me. So I think that's the basis for hers. Apparently he had been telling others that she, quote, wanted a sugar daddy to pay her $4,000 to be his girlfriend. So some of these comments, I think she's wanted to really push back against and say, hey, no way, this was not consensual.
Thank you for putting that in quotes, Garrett. That was very kind of you.
You're welcome.
My computer has frozen, so I'm going to read Feds push discrimination claims against Nike. You're up.
Yeah. Here you go. So the turning things on its head. Nike's, they're facing a equal employment EEOC investigation from their office, right? Long story short, the EEOC is charging Nike with reverse racism against white people, and so this goes back a little ways. The EEOC had filed a subpoena with Nike as part of an investigation into their workplace hiring practices, and that Nike was favoring, diversity and DEI type of candidates in their workplace. And so the EEOC has been wanting information, and according to Nike, they said, hey, we've been cooperating, we've been, having a good faith dialogue with the EEOC as part of their investigation. And then what do you know, last week they went ahead and filed a motion in federal court. So they've kind of taken this now to the next level, and it makes it public. And so Nike's got to deal with this. I think part of this goes back to the fact that in 2021, Nike presented a 5-year plan for a more diverse workplace, and they had a target of 35% representation of racial minorities in their workplace. And the current EEOC does not like this and feels that this is reverse discrimination. And I don't know where this comes from. Does this maybe go back to Trump's beef with Nike over their Colin Kaepernick ad? I don't really know, but here we go.
Yeah, I don't know either. That guy doesn't seem to hold a grudge, so that would be surprising.
Right.
Preston,
Right.
Preston, over to you, buddy.
Yeah, the EEOC, and I don't know anything about how this works, but it was reported that the chairman of the EEOC, Lucas, she posted a social media urging white men to come forward if they've experienced race or sex discrimination work. And that would be like you'd follow up on this to see if stuff's going on and then potentially file one of these motions to get the information. But this one against Nike, it's rare, it's claimed, that she filed her own complaint through the most rarely used tool known on the commissioner's charge, according to court documents. So nobody came forward. She just decided to do this, and that's what Nike's dealing with now. All
right. I'm going to keep my thoughts to myself and move on to the next and final story, and I will not make a Ja Morant joke, as it's the NBA trade deadline, but there is a Utah bill that – so just to be clear, right now you cannot bring a sign into the Delta Center. You are not allowed to bring a sign into the Delta Center, but there's a new bill that would allow you to bring your piece, a concealed firearm permit, if you're a concealed firearm permit holder, you could bring your gun to Jazz and Mammoth games. Again, personal feelings aside, so you guys go ahead. What's going on?
Yeah, there's a bill, HB 452, brought by Candace Pierucci of Harriman, that was unveiled Monday, that would require any private entity, business, or venue that has received more than $1 million in public funding to allow concealed firearms permit holders and bring them to their events. She comes out and claims we really have a robust concealed carry permit. The idea would be that if you're going to accept state dollars, we should at least have discussion if you're going to prohibit someone's Second Amendment rights. So apparently the Salt Lake City Entertainment District, which includes the Delta Center, has received from the legislature nearly $1 billion in subsidies. We know that the NBA and the NHL, and so this would bring into play the Delta Center, that people could bring firearms or weapons to the Delta Center. The NBA, it's in dispute with the NBA and the NHL's policies that you cannot bring firearms or weapons into their games. So this bill has been proposed. If I'm betting, this thing's not going to go through. I don't know that people would feel comfortable going to games knowing that people are packing, but there you go. The legislature's in session.
Garrett, final word is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, if you like watching professional sports live in the state of Utah, you should not want this bill to pass. I mean, this is in direct conflict with NBA and NHL policies about firearms in their arenas. I really would like to see a statement from SCG or Ryan Smith about this. And the second thing I was thinking, this can't be good for the Millers' bid for an MLB team, right? I mean, if you're looking at this, is this the state of law in the state of Utah? So anyway, wow.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of a group that I would love to be, allowed to have a firearm, it is measured sports fans after 8 beers. Yeah, smart move.
Exactly.
All right, guys, before I set you loose on this Thursday, for any of our listeners who have legal questions, how can they get a hold of you? Over at Handy and Handy.
Yeah, well, look, outside of sports law, what we do, we handle personal injury cases. We help people who've been injured in accidents. Give us a call, 801-264-6677, or go to our website, handylawutah.com.
Preston, I hope you have a lovely Sunday, and I'll leave it at that. You guys have a great weekend.
It'll be a fun game.
I hope so. Go ahead.
I think I wouldn't put any money on the game. How's that?
Okay.
I'm hoping, but I wouldn't put any money on the game.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I hope you enjoy it. I'll just say that. You guys have a good weekend, okay?
Have a good weekend.
Thanks,
Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Black Crows and Whiskey Myers are taking over the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on August the 13th. Tune in to the OC show at noon for your chance to win a pair of tickets. More details can be found at ESPN700sports.com. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Final hour of the program comes your way next on a Thursday afternoon right here on ESPN 700. All right, here we go. Drive at 5 time, Thursday afternoon style. We are 3 days away from Super Bowl 60. Reminder, we are your home of the Super Bowl here in the market. So if you're not lucky enough to be at home checking it out, you got to work, drive around town, run some errands. Make sure to join us for Super Bowl coverage coming up on Sunday. 3 days away. The line continues to stay the same. Seattle is favored by 4.5 points. That over-under has remained at 46.5. Despite some of the injury, I will say at least conversations out there. Now, Nick Emanwari, the safety from South Carolina, who's a big piece of Seattle's defense, rolled an ankle in practice today. But according to reports, he avoided anything serious. He's expected to go coming up on Sunday. Sam Darnold dealing with an oblique, but he looked fine against the Rams to me. And then Drake May has been battling a bit of a shoulder issue and a little bit of an illness, but he was back as a full participant in practice today. Speaking of the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. They got their max discount this week, which is a max discount for the big game live in the app right now. Drake May, 1 passing yard for the max discount to win. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. Now, because they're a client and I care about them, I am going to share with you my Prize Picks lineup coming up for the big game. The decision as to whether or not you decide to allocate funds is on you and you alone, okay? So here's how I'm rolling. I referenced the max discount, which is Drake May more than 0.5 passing yards, which I think he will do. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I'm taking more, 7.5 receptions. I'm going to take more on Drake May, 7 rushing attempts. I'm going to take more on Hunter Henry to score a touchdown. I'm just picking Hunter Henry to score an anytime touchdown. Give me more on Kenneth Walker, 18.5 rush attempts, and more on Stephon Diggs, 3.5 catches. For entertainment purposes only. All right, busy show today. Of course, the NBA trade deadline has come and gone. The Utah Jazz more or less decided to stand pat. They made a couple of minor moves, but nothing of note. See what I did there? As it pertains to adding to the group. The Jazz are playing in Atlanta tonight to take on the Atlanta Hawks, but none of the players involved in the trades will be available just yet. Of course, they're all on their way to Salt Lake. I think I saw some social media posts from Jaren Jackson Jr. and some others that they are here, but as of right now, not available to play for the Jazz tonight. Keontae George is also not going to play. Looks like Yusuf Nurkic is out as well. I honestly don't know who is playing for the Jazz tonight. They have to dress 8 players. Atlanta is trying to compete. The Jazz very much are not, even though they were able to catch a win over Indiana the other night. Speaking of Indiana, reports are Indiana engaged with the Utah Jazz on conversations to acquire young Walker Kessler. The reports are at least 2 unprotected picks were involved in the offer, and so the Jazz said no to that. And then the Pacers turn their attention to the Clippers, who are trying to rebuild their treasure trove of lack of draft assets, is what I should say. With the Paul George deal, the Kawhi Leonard deal, they had no draft picks. Well, they moved on from Harden, and now they moved on from Ivica Zubac, who is now the newest member of the Indiana Pacers. Kobe Brown also goes to Indiana. The Clippers get Ben Mathurin, of course, former Arizona Wildcat, Isaiah Jackson, and 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick. So the Clippers are trying to go all in on resetting a little bit, although their pick this year is owed to Oklahoma City because everybody owes their picks to Oklahoma City. The New York Knicks found out that they were going to lose Miles McBride, Deuce McBride, who's had a really good season, is going to undergo some surgery. So they make a play to bring in Jose Alvarado, who was with the New Orleans Pelicans, as their new backup point guard. Now, the biggest piece of news of the day today is probably that the Milwaukee Bucks have elected to hold on to Giannis Antetokounmpo, at least in the meantime. It's the right move if they didn't get the deal that checked every single box. As we know around here, if you're going to trade a generational star and your cornerstone, you have one shot to get this right. If you're John Horst and you're going to trade Giannis, You have to get as much as you possibly can because this is the one shot. John Morant also staying in Memphis. The Lakers were able to grab Luke Kennard today from the Atlanta Hawks, and the Golden State Warriors, since you and I last spoke, consummated a deal late last night where Kristaps Porzingis is also leaving Atlanta in exchange for Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield. And now that I'm looking at all these deals, I don't know who's going to be available for the Hawks tonight. This could be an interesting situation between the Jazz and the Hawks. A lot of teams that have made deals in action tonight. We were told this would be a quiet trade deadline, and it was the exact opposite. Rough night in college basketball last night for some of our local teams. BYU basketball has now lost 4 of their last 5 games, and they have Houston, the number 8 team in the country, in Provo coming up on Saturday night. Then they're at Baylor, the return of Rob Wright down in Waco. Colorado at home. They're going to retire Jimmer Fredette's jersey that night. But they've lost 4 of 5, and they are trending to a 5 or a 6 seed. For a roster that reportedly has cost between $11 and $13 million, and a head coach who is one of the highest paid coaches in the Big 12, penny for the thoughts of BYU fans right now, as your team has lost 4 or 5. And, when you have a player the magnitude of A.J. DeBonsa, potentially the number 1 or the number 2 overall pick, what that brings every single night is the best effort possible from the other team, because these players who are not necessarily thought to be pros, they want to get on the radar of scouts. So if you know that 20 to 30 NBA scouts are in your building, a lot of them to watch AJ, you're going to get the best possible effort from the other team. Oklahoma State is a fine team. They're not horrible, but they're about 500 around Big 12 play. They're 4-5. They're 16-6. This was a quad 1 loss for BYU, but they have gone in the wrong direction. And if this team, after the money that was spent on talent and coaching, is like a 6 seed in the tournament and wins 1 game, a lot of disappointed alums and boosters and donors, I would imagine, down in Provo. For Utah's side of things, another winnable game last night went by the wayside. Arizona State and Bobby Hurley had 7 players available. 7 players available to play last night against Utah. And if not for Don McHenry, Utah probably loses by 20. Rough night for Terrence Brown. Has been great all year, but 2 of 16. He had 5 turnovers. He only had 6 points. Don had 23. It was good to see Sado Traore hit some shots. He was 4 of 9 from 3. He had 16. Rough night for Keanu Dawes, who only had 7 points. And a rough season for Utah basketball. Year 1 under Alex Jensen. Continued with another loss last night. That's 4 straight losses. They've lost 10 of their last 11. They're tied with K-State for the worst record in the Big 12, 1-8. They're 9-13 overall. And it gets harder coming up on Saturday as they travel to Fog Allen to take on the number 11 team in the country, the Kansas Jayhawks. But the NBA trade deadline came and went. Anthony Davis, James Harden, Kristaps Porzingis, Jaren Jackson Jr. I could keep going. A bunch of really good players are on the move. All right, final segment of the program, Thursday afternoon style. Friday show tomorrow. Start your weekend out the right way. Utah Jazz in action tonight. They're taking on the Atlanta Hawks. I am very interested to see how this game goes with two teams that have traded a bunch of different players. Let's see. What other good games do we have tonight? I have no idea what the Bulls are doing. I think they've added 9 second-round picks and a bunch of random guards. Hornets Rockets is okay. Oh, we got a little Spurs Mavericks, little Wembanyama Cooper Flag. Warriors Suns in Phoenix, Sixers Lakers. Yeah, there's some decent games on tonight. If you're looking to watch some pro basketball, 3 days away from the Super Bowl. Reminder, you can hear the Super Bowl on this little old radio show. Then college basketball over the weekend with Utah and BYU. Shout out to Utah State, man. That's a tough place to play. New Mexico at the Pit, where Utah State won their 4th straight game, and they smoked them. It's pretty close. Pretty close at halftime. I think it was a 3-point game. Then they ran away from him. So Utah State was able to save a rough night for BYU and Utah. I don't know really what to say about Utah basketball this year other than what we've said all along. I mean, I got to be honest. I was hoping to see a little bit more progress in the right direction. And, Alex is a great guy. He was a great player, and he has proven to be a very, very high-level professional coach as the G League Coach of the Year, spent time coaching under Rick, was 9 years as Quinn's #1 assistant. They're missing 4 of their planned-on rotational pieces, and hopefully they get some players back. More often than not, the talent discrepancy feels pretty real, but we were talking about this 2-game scenario with OK State and Arizona State as 2 pretty winnable games, and they lost both of them. Now they go to Kansas on Saturday. I don't know what to say, man.
You got Kansas, you got Houston, you got Iowa State coming up. Like, it doesn't get easy. So for Utah, yeah, it's I don't want to say bleak, but at least in year one, there's not a lot to gain from it. Now, I think for Alex, the guy's got the X's and O's. I think he's really good basketball mind in that way. The question is for him, and this is going to be the question for me the second he got hired, can you get the guys in the room? Can you be a recruiter? You've been a pro coach. Can you recruit? And that's going to be the challenge for him going forward.
Yeah, and look, give me your thoughts on, like, we were expecting Utah to struggle. I will admit that it's worse than I thought because we just aren't seeing a lot of progress in the right direction. I just have to wonder what BYU fans and BYU alums, and namely BYU donors and boosters, because remember, with the Utah private equity deal, as we've kind of underscored, they're allowing alumni to invest in it. And I don't know what the ROI looks like at the end of the day. I've heard some things that I'm not comfortable with going on air. But if you're asked to invest in something, it's much different. Like if your friend comes to you and is like, hey, I've got this great business plan. I need 10 grand and you're going to get 15 grand in 2 years. Of course, do your due diligence to make sure that's a real thing. It's much different if he's like, hey, give me 10 grand. BYU fans are asked to just donate and give money. The reports are they've spent the second most amount of money in the Big 12 on their roster. Kevin, I think, is the second or the third highest paid coach in the country. They have in the Big 12, they have potentially the #1 pick in the draft. 3 pros for sure, 4 maybe with Keba Keita if he can go overseas and make some money. They've lost 4 of 5 and 3 straight games, and they're trending to like a 6 seed. If this team, juxtaposed to preseason expectations, is a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament and like the 7th best team in the Big 12, and they win like 1 tournament game, what's to be said about that based off of all of the things that I kind of just outlined?
Well, I mean, you definitely don't really consider that a success. I would say you got to give it its time, though, right? And I don't know that 1 year is something that you want to make a decision on, like punting, oh, this isn't working, right? In college basketball, yeah, the turnaround can be quicker, but you've got to at least play it out a little bit. Now, there's going to be more pressure, that's for sure, and you're not going to have A.J. DeBonsa. You may not be able to get the next big recruit. So, it may not be a success in year one at the level that they expected, but I think I would caution fans and boosters, whoever is getting involved in that, to not punt just because year one wasn't a national championship, because the reality is you're in Provo.
Can I tell you my favorite Super Bowl storyline?
Yeah.
Tom Brady doesn't have a dog in the fight.
Isn't that hilarious?
And all of his teammates, like, outwardly threatening him.
Asante Samuels.
Like, online.
Yeah. I mean, it's Tom Brady. He wants to look cool. He wants to play the sides. And his coach, I guess, in Las Vegas is in Seattle. So I get that. But, dude, come on. You can say it. You won how many Super Bowls with those guys?
Mm-hmm.
He's silly.
Yeah,
we know this. He's silly.
It's a really weird hill for him to die on. I mean, everybody knows him as a Patriot, but seeing like all the Barstool bros melting down about it has just been hilarious. All right, we've got the Waste Management Open. Scotty Scheffler duffed a chip today, and it warmed my heart. It made me so happy. If that guy
Golf
can
is
do
hard.
it, if that guy can do it, then I'm going to feel good. Hopefully Tony can turn it around. Rough day one for Tony, but rough day one for Scotty Scheffler, opening the door for maybe one of these lesser-known golfers to get a win. All right, tomorrow we will start out your weekend the right way. Porter, how exactly will we do that?
A drive edition sans Porter, by the way.
You're out tomorrow.
Out tomorrow.
Okay.
But I filled up
Good
the
to
guest
know.
list for you.
Okay.
Sam Bruckhouse, going to drop by for some Sumer Sports. Dave McMiniman will recap the NBA trade deadline. Of course, Paul Pugmire can give you the latest from the Waste Management Open, although he will not be wasted. Chris Comrani in the 4 o'clock hour, and Kalen Jones, our old friend, in the 4 o'clock hour.
There you go. That'll be a good, fun Friday show to get you ready for Super Bowl Sunday and a busy weekend in the world of pro and college basketball. Special thank you today to Omar Ruiz, Richard Smith, and Howard Beck for any of the sound you missed from the show. Go to the website, ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is in the App Store and the Google Play Store for free. And then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 full hours, check out the podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. So subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. For Porter, I'm Spence saying good night. Have a great Thursday evening. We'll talk to you on a Friday edition of the program.